I take it as it comes. If it's raining, I will inform you that it is raining. If it isn't, then I will inform you that it isn't.
It's likely to be a crazy day. Good morning, CT.
Yes, good morning.
Apart from the rain, is there everything all right?
I would take the view that everything is all right, where everything means me. I am fine.
You are the world and the world is you.
At this particular moment in time, yes, in the history of mankind, yes.
That is good. That is fantastic. Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? Welcome to the Situation Room. This is Ndoko and CT Mugo in the studio today. Eric Latif is in the rain. Is in the wind. Is in the wind.
Yeah, that's what we're putting it.
But he'll be here with us shortly. All right. So it's Monday morning. It's the 7th of February. A week passed into the second month of the year. And we're looking at so many things having unfolded today. And thank you for joining us this morning. We'll take a look at who's with us in the room this morning. But before that, we're going to take a look at what's happening in the world concerning COVID-19. There's a lot going on, quite a number of conversations for us to have today. We're going to have an agriculture conversation and see what's really going on in the country in terms of food security and how to make food more secure, what is being done, who sits in the positions of responsibility and authority, because food security still is a big issue in this country, having not been sorted out. A lot of politics having gone on over the weekend as well. Quite a lot for us to sift through and see who's saying what and allow you and join us to be part of that conversation. A lot of calls for the stop of politicking and to really focus on what's happening with Kenyans. So we'll have that conversation today as well. But before we go into that, let's take a look at what's happening with COVID-19. In numbers, still in the hundreds of, over 100 million cases of COVID-19 having been found globally. We're still looking at those numbers rising. But the conversation that is taking place right now, CT, is vaccines. It's still an issue. We saw a story that came out yesterday, and a little bit disturbing, if you ask me. But South Africa says that the AstraZeneca vaccine is actually not effective in stopping the variant that
Not effective or not as effective as they would have wanted it to be.
Well, they've said that what they see now is that they've halted the use of this Oxford vaccine yesterday. Evidence emerged that the vaccine did not protect clinical trial participants from mild or moderate illness caused by the more contagious virus variant that was first seen in South Africa. It's already being called the South African variant. So it's a blow. They're calling it a devastating blow. We must understand this is a story coming out of the New York Times. It's a devastating blow to the country's efforts to combat the pandemic.
It isn't. Why are they making it look? There are two discussions here. This particular vaccine, when it was being developed, did not have in mind this new variant. The variant came out around the time when the rolling out of this particular vaccine was beginning to take place. And then the discussion was, how effective is it? Now, how on earth were you going to know how effective it was until you administered it?
Right. Well, here they were, and they've gone ahead and administered it, right?
Yes.
At least in the trial stage. And they're saying, looking at this variant, it may not be that way. Now, just a little bit more in terms of information. They said, excuse me, a similar problem held among people who had been infected by earlier versions of the coronavirus. The immunity they acquired naturally did not appear to protect them from mild or moderate cases when reinfected by the variant known as B1351. So we understand that this comes a week after millions of the doses had already been delivered in South Africa. I think from where I'm coming, I think the alarm bells may be ringing a little bit too loudly. It doesn't necessarily mean that people cannot be vaccinated against COVID-19 with the doses that have already been provided. There's global evidence to show that those who receive the vaccine can actually get on well with it. Now, also, it's making it seem as though everybody who's infected with COVID-19 in South Africa is infected with the second strain. And that's not the case.
That's what seems to be in the offing. That's what seems to be what is actually being presented. If you look at the news, that is actually being reported.
But it's not true.
No, it isn't true. They're almost saying that almost everyone who is in South Africa, if not everyone, is infected with the new variant. And that is also not true.
Exactly.
Yes.
So to make it seem as if the millions of doses that came into South Africa would go at a loss, or they would go to waste. It is not true. They can still use it. I think this is one example of where we just have to be really careful in terms of how we consume information that comes to us. And so it would seem as if there was cause for panic or cause for alarm, in as much as they thought it would help. Then it just means that folks have to buckle down and maybe do some more in terms of research and the science of it to find out which kind of vaccine then would be able to protect against the second strain of COVID-19.
But also of significance is this, if you don't have a historical background as to not just vaccines but as to medication, believe me, anytime you roll out, whether it is a drug, whether it is a vaccine, on a much wider population, the truth of the matter is you will get results that you couldn't have before you rolled it out. Sure. Remember, all the results that we're talking about were within limited populations. Now, this is what happens. And that is why the subject of data collection and using the data that you garner from rolling it out becomes an important tool for negotiation and discussion. Now, Israel understood this very well from the get-go.
Yeah.
They got their vaccines, but they had negotiated into the entire issue of payment on, look, we are going to be giving you data. Okay? Now, this data has a value to it. So we need to discuss how much we actually pay you when we've considered this.
Right.
Everything that is happening now is early days yet. Really very early days yet.
Extremely so.
Because one of the things that you must also bear in mind is when you introduce the vaccine, what makes you think that this virus will not adapt?
Exactly.
What makes you think?
You don't know that. So we're still in the stages where, further and continuous testing needs to take place.
If you're to go by what we've seen with the vaccines, flu vaccines, because flu, that is something that is prevalent every season, every year in countries that have very cold weather. Every year you bring in a new flu vaccine. Why? Because you need to fortify it. Because you know very well that the virus is going to mutate.
Yeah.
And over the years, they've even had an opportunity to know the number or the various varieties of flu.
Variants?
Strains? No. The reason I'm doing the ha moment is why it becomes imperative to actually inform people in great detail about some of the things that we are doing. Because even the reporting right now, see, I'm not certain whether these are science journalists reporting, I'm not certain, or they're just reporters reporting. Because from a scientific perspective, this is not bad news. It is just news.
No, it isn't bad news. And
it's news.
That's why I was saying I think the alarm bells are ringing maybe a little bit too loudly, because I think also this is expected.
It is expected.
Especially when you had clinical trials for a vaccine for which a variant had not even been discovered at the time that the clinical trials were going on. You wouldn't expect that because you have one vaccine, it would cover in terms of efficacy through and through. And by the time you heard that there was a second or third strain of this, then you would have expected as well that this vaccine or this one vaccine that you had would not necessarily cover everything else. I think that would be expected.
If there had been a claim that it was 100% efficacious, then I would understand the noise.
Right.
It wasn't. It wasn't. So the moment you leave that particular, there exists that element of non-effectiveness. Because when you say it's 70, you're saying 30, we're not really sure. You say 80, 20, we're not really sure. Then you bring in a variation. Now, certainly, this was to be expected. Now, this is where the communication comes in explaining and so that people understand. But then again, it's difficult because people wanted a message of hope. And this is what the vaccine did. It was almost presented as a definitive message of hope. Now, wait and see what happens to the other vaccines that have been rolled out. Believe me, you will be listening to similar stories. And it isn't a negative thing. It's information that makes it possible for the developers to now know what else they need to do to ensure that it is more efficacious.
Okay, well, let's look at numbers that are coming out of the world. We're in February, and we know, for example, that Vaccine soon to land in the country. Kenya expects 24 million COVID-19 vaccine doses to start arriving in a couple of weeks. Actually, so we're looking at that in the second week of February. So 24 million doses have been ordered. These are the AstraZeneca vaccines, and we expect them to start arriving next week, according to CS Kagwe. So we know that at least 12 million people will be treated with this. In terms of the public communication, we're not really seeing much. What we just know is that from the 14th moving forward, we should actually see some of these in the country. It cost quite some in terms of change for the government, but we'll also understand that the priority for vaccination will be given to health workers and other essential workers like teachers, according to CS Kagwe. So he did not say much about the procurement or how much it would cost the government, but we know that come the 14th, 15th, 16th of February, we will start to see this vaccine landing in the country. Yes? Happy? 129.
Happy.
Yeah.
Are you making a statement of fact? Are you asking a question?
No, I'm asking a question if you're happy.
About what exactly?
That, the vaccine is coming into the country.
No, not particularly.
No?
This isn't an issue on which one should determine, or whose result one should determine happiness. No. 24 million will cater for what? What number of 12 million. Now, and what's our population? 50 million. So, what happens to the other 38? Look, I'm not trying to be a wet blanket. I'm simply saying this is a situation that requires a wait and see and continue looking and understanding. Underline understanding, write it in capital and then underline it in red and then circle it in green or yellow, because the understanding is very important. More than anything else, the understanding is very important. Because remember, there's a discussion that is actually beginning to take place, given what we're seeing or what we hear from Tanzania, where nothing actually stopped. Life just continued as normal. Now I'm asking this question. What if indeed Tanzania seems to have understood how to deal? What if? The if here. And that really simply going about your life is just as effective as a lockdown. Then what do we say? And then there's a question that will arise. Is it time we started considering the possibility of removing this lockdown altogether? Yes. These are real discussions. So, as I said, it isn't an opportunity to be happy. It's an opportunity to listen, to try and understand, but continue understanding and learning. That's what I would say.
Sure, absolutely. That's what it presents, I think, at this point. A lot of stuff still going on, a lot of conversations still taking place in terms of what is necessary to be done. But I think one of the things that is vital here is the communication, especially from the ministry, in terms of how this is going to work. I think the general population still has no idea what to do, where to go, who to contact, because we're talking about next week, right? 14th, 15th, 16th is a week from today. And if it's going to land, we know that they're not going to be sitting around for some time and not be administered. So I guess they have 7 days to start to tell people what's going on.
Very hopeful. Good morning, guys. I'm here. I'm
wow,
right
Eric,
here.
hi.
Yes, I'm here. Had this arrangement with my alarm clock, and then it decided that we had not renewed the conversation.
Oh, really?
So
I don't think it's the alarm clock, my friend. It's the body alarm clock. The body alarm clock often does what you need, not what you had planned.
not what you had planned.
No, what you need.
Okay.
And that is what has happened.
All right. Either way, good morning to you. It's 16 minutes after 6 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Let's take a break, take a look at the weather, and then go to today's proverb and the newspaper headlines. Hello. We are live streaming on Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Say hello to us. We'll be saying hello to you shortly.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
There are so many people peddling what is false and that it bears remarkable resemblance to what is true.
Politicians have their agenda, and their agenda is to use every opportunity to sell that agenda and to loot this nation.
I have seen major strides that are done in this country when we talk to each other as against talking at each other.
We start getting back into the tribal cocoons which were put to us by the colonial powers. You know, they gave us physical freedom but not mental freedom. We're still mentally colonized today into these cocoons of tribe.
Now, if you live in an area where it's difficult to find a dog,
He's a goat. I kid you not.
In which part of this country is it difficult to find a dog? So that you resort. Afande yumbo yako iko na
The weather with Spice FM.
All right, it's raining in Nairobi. It's going to be raining for most of today, from what the forecast says. 17 degrees, going to highs of 23 today. In Nyeri, also raining as well. 15 degrees, going to highs of 21. 26 will be the high in Nakuru, where it's also raining this morning. 15 degrees, the low today. It's mostly cloudy in Eldoret this morning at 14, going to highs of 23, coming back down to lows of 15. We're looking at mostly cloudy conditions in Kisumu, highs of 30 and lows of 21. Clear conditions in Kakamega, highs of 31 and lows of 17. We're also looking at highs of 31 in Mombasa, where it's 26 and raining this morning. It's partly cloudy and a chance of rain in Malindi at 27. That'll also be the low for today, going to highs of 31. We're looking at Kampala weather, clear conditions at 20, highs of 31 and lows of 18. Heavy thunderstorms in Dar es Salaam this morning, highs of 31 and lows of 26. We're looking at cloudy conditions in Johannesburg, highs of 24 and lows of 16. Chance of rain there as well. It's a warm day in Lagos so far, 28 degrees at 4 a.m. this morning. Partly cloudy conditions, highs of 34 and lows of 26. 32 will be the high for today in Kinshasa. It's mostly clear at 23. There's a 50% chance of rain. It's 1 degree and sunny conditions in Beijing, going to highs of 7 and lows of -7. -1 in Paris, below freezing today. It's also cloudy and a chance of rain mixed with the snow. It'll be very sleety in the capital of France. 2 the high and lows of -2. It's snowing in London at -2. The high will be flat on 0 and lows of -1. Sunday night rings in at -1 in New York. Clear skies, however, going to highs of 4 and -6 the low.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. Spice FM.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
All right,
Nairobi.
It's 20 minutes after 6 o'clock. This being Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Let us see who is online.
Everybody's up and early this morning. Saharan Wafula is tuned in from Muhonje, Kakamega County. Did I say that right?
Sounded right. I don't know what that's right.
Okay. Gasheri Wambijiwe. Good morning. Tuned in this morning from Thika Road and loving the Situation Room. Asante Sana. Isaiah Kabwaro is tuned in. As is Noel Oma. That's a nice name, Noel. Dropping this here, believing and guided by faith. That's Wanjiko Marge. Okay, good morning to you. Dagi Oguta is tuned in this morning from Nyabola. Wishing you also a good day. Charity Maina tuned in from Nakuru, and Josephat Wafula is tuned in from Butere constituency, which is in Western Kenya. Cyprian Mwaura says, good morning, new day, new week, tuned in from Nakuru. Alex Bogo is tuned in from Nyeri this morning, and Valerie Gishuri tuned in from Saudi Arabia. And Leah is tuned in from Australia. Okay. Happy new week, friends. That's Lawrence Carrier is tuned in from the big city. The big city is?
Who knows, man? According to Lawrence, the big city could be Meru.
Well, there you go. Okay, so Waterman Jeffrey tuned in from Minneapolis this morning. And Robin Bogo says, good morning, spicing from Mombasa. Master Dan is tuned in from Beijing, where it's at -1 this morning. And Career Leonard is tuned in from Nairobi. Wood Dala is tuned in from Nakuru, as in is Joroge Cha. Everybody else tuned in this morning. Good morning and happy Monday.
Everybody, welcome to the show. CT, what is today's proverb?
when there is peace in the community, the chief does not carry a shield.
When there's peace in the community, I would dare add order in the community. The chief does not carry a shield. Eh?
Nope.
Because there is peace.
Because there is peace. The absence of peace is what necessitates the carrying of a shield. So it would seem.
Okay.
The absence of peace is war. Okay. Sorry.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Just disquiet,
Yeah.
Okay.
which might lead to.
To war. And the shield in this particular case is a symbol of authority, right?
Yes, among other things, it is a symbol of authority.
Just to show you that I am the boss.
And
And
also,
I
it
need you to
Eric, remember, it will
the
also show
light.
you that I am the target.
most of the target.
So you know where to aim.
Okay. All right, let's take a look at the headlines. What do you have?
All right, front and center of the Standard today. Is it time to end curfew? Lost jobs, lost livelihoods. During the day, very little will tell you we are living in odd times. A lot of the strict COVID-19 measures have disappeared with time, and super spreader political rallies are back. Haha. But the nights are eerily different. The 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. curfew stands. Now, business owners are asking questions. And these questions, in terms of why are we still essentially locked down, quote unquote, especially at night, and are saying it's time to, pull back these measures. Pedestrians on streets are wearing masks strapped loosely to their chins, pulling them up once in a while to avoid the occasional eye of the police. Hand washing units have run into disuse, and posters cautioning people to maintain social distance are barely intact. A lot has changed since COVID-19 was first reported in early March 2020. Back then, the country was scared stiff and thousands lost jobs in the deadly virus. As the deadly virus came at enormous economic price, movement in and out of the most affected counties was restricted. In 2020, starting from the second quarter of the year in April, the country barely scraped by. Government data showed that 1.7 million people had lost their jobs, taking the unemployment rate in the country to a high of 10.4%. However, in the third quarter, the unemployment rate came down to 7.2%. After the strict containment measures were partially lifted, sparking a flurry of economic activities. So it was seen that as the containment measures loosened up a little bit, more and more people got jobs, the employment rate dropped, more people were able to operate their businesses. So now, as we are seeing that things have changed even more, when more people are out and we're not getting these high numbers in terms of recording, then the question has come from many business people, why then can we not
Lift this curfew.
end 317 days of COVID-19 curfew? Let people go back to work. We had a significant number of the population who go to work at night, who operate their businesses over the night and have not been able to do this because of the curfew. Also, a significant amount of money that is being lost because these businesses cannot operate. Whether you're looking at the service industry, whether you're looking at manufacturing, we have quite a number of manufacturing industry that operate at night. Why can this not go on? And is it not time? We've been in this limbo, quote unquote, for the last at least 6 months. And we've seen evidence that when you open it up a little bit, people are able to do more and able to earn more. So why can't we just open this up completely and allow it to run again and people put more money in their pockets and the economy gets better?
Could there be a reason why? Okay, let's look at the other side. So what would be the reason why?
What would be the reason why?
Yeah.
Why to keep the curfew?
Why
in
to
place?
keep the curfew?
Because the question, of course, it arises that once you open things up completely, you run the risk of then spreading again. If one person had it, this is what they will tell you. If one person had it, and then you allow people to run amok,
Okay.
then there could be infection.
If you
again.
compare the number of people who are out at night to those who are out during the day, where is the spreader time? It's during the day, right? So why not just allow people to go back to their business at night?
Oh, look, I agree. Look, if you've said open schools, which for me has always been the thing, if you said open schools and then you have 1 million people added to the equation, regardless, then if you can do it during the day, then I think you might as well open it up at night. Because what are you trying to curtail at this point? Folks are out. They're out during the day. They're at home sleeping. Those businesses that need to run at night, you could even argue that there would be a limited number. So why not allow them go out? Because if you've basically opened it up by saying children should go back to school, so open it at night. Open it at night.
Many would argue, What are these night businesses? The night businesses are the nightclubs. Not necessarily. I mean, there are very many. Yes, there are nightclubs, but also there are many other businesses that operate because of the nightclubs being open. For example, taxis operate at night. You'll find those people who sell smokies outside at night. Very many other businesses that basically just depend on this ecosystem. I'd say just open it up. The truth of the matter is, and that's the truth of the matter, is even during the day, the measures that people were expected to observe, some are observing, many are not observing. This thing of wearing masks is just a Nairobi thing. Go outside Nairobi and you find very many other towns, especially the smaller towns.
Not just outside Nairobi, certain parts of Nairobi.
Even in Nairobi, within
Yeah.
Nairobi.
Certain parts of Nairobi, this thing is a non-existent idea. So we've seen also that political rallies are back in operation. Forget it. So, and look, not just open businesses at night, open places of worship. Let people go back to church and mosque and temple as they were before. Just
Allow life back to normal.
Because you can't have your foot in the door halfway and no, just allow it. I can see CT piercing his eyes at me. I don't even know where to look now.
It isn't as though I am looking at you in wonderment. I'm just wondering, because it's not an easy decision to make. Because the reasons why there was a lockdown to begin with haven't actually disappeared.
No.
Yet there is the reality of the economy, because really the serious discussion is not the health perspective. That one is understood. The economic perspective. Because in the absence of setting this right, then even the health perspective will probably just get worse even with the lockdown.
CT, on Friday we talked about, there's a group of fellows who said that they wanted the government to rethink this economic buffering for Kenyans. And it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The government has already said that, whatever funds they have has already been allocated for other things. They're not going to institute another stimulus package. It won't happen. So here we are. What option do you have? Then allow people to go about and then mushroom work and economic activity for themselves.
Let life come back to normal. The challenge I see, and I've always seen this with our government, is it's got to play according to international standards and apply that international PR, which is, appear to be doing something well. You very well know that you're not doing it. Because those reasons, the health reasons as well, are there on paper. But there is something that the government also has observed and has seen, and that's why it's just, said, turn a blind eye, sort of, to what's happening. You guys want to wear a mask? Wear a mask. We are observing, we are seeing. If we get to a point where we are seeing more and more people coming to hospitals, or more and more deaths being reported, then we take action and we talk about it. But
as if they will.
It is in that light, then I do agree with you that in terms of what Kenya and Tanzania have done, really, there is no difference. You've just called one thing something else. But in terms of, they blatantly just said, look, we'll do
For
it
instance,
as it comes.
how often do you get reports of people being arrested as
nowadays?
Yes,
No.
abrogating the curfew law. Do you hear? No.
No.
So,
They still get arrested because that's a serious cash cow. But in terms of now,
The big numbers that we
into
saw of the trucks being filled with people and things like that.
cash cow, yes. In terms of it being reported publicly, and
Different
being
matter.
taken to court, that's a different matter. So you're arrested now, then you go down a couple of meters, you give out something, you go home. 6:30. Let's take a break. Let's see what's happening on the roads this lovely Monday morning. And then it's been raining all night in Nairobi, in parts of Nairobi, I should say. And then we look at more headlines. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Did you know that knowing your HIV status is simple? You can visit your nearest health center where you will be tested for free, or you can test yourself using the self-kits sold at chemists for 500 shillings only. If you test HIV positive, don't fear, because there is medication that will allow you to live your normal life. You will also be counseled on how to live with HIV and fulfill your life goals or dreams. Knowing your HIV status as a parent is beneficial for yourself and your loved ones. Expectant mothers with HIV, did you know it's possible to deliver a healthy, uninfected baby? Visit a health facility near you during your antenatal visits to get proper information, advice, and treatment for HIV. HIV treatment can improve your overall health and can protect an unborn baby from contracting HIV before, during delivery, and after birth. We must not exclude or discriminate against our HIV-positive counterparts because living with the virus is not a curse. Follow the Ministry of Health's instructions to protect ourselves from HIV and also to protect ourselves from the coronavirus that causes COVID-19. Do you know your status? This message has been brought to you by the National AIDS Control Council.
Okay, guys, so with the rain comes the drama. This morning, Monday, already that we are seeing quite a number of things that we hoped we wouldn't. Overturned vehicle already on Outer Ring Road this morning, just after Babadogo, coming from Thika Road. You want to avoid that if you can. It's really messy from Roysambo on Thika Road. Use other routes if you can. If you don't need to be on that, please don't. Let's look towards industrial area. Section of Lusaka Road already between the City Stadium and DT Dolby is totally flooded. If you're not driving a lorry, then please avoid that because you're not going to be able to see how deep that actually is. The Southern Bypass outbound is a parking lot from Kikuyu to Gikambura. So if you're planning to travel outside of Nairobi, please use alternate routes this morning. We are seeing a mess everywhere. Thika Road already is gridlocked. It happened at around 6 o'clock. Unfortunately, this morning as well, a multiple vehicle accident at Wetithie footbridge, causing very, very heavy traffic going towards Nairobi. So already we're going to ask guys, please be very, very careful this morning. The roads are slippery. There's still a downpour in certain parts of the city. I will take a look at other roads and how they look. It's already piling up on Mombasa Road as well. Spice FMKE, reach us on Twitter. Let's see what it looks like in your neck of the woods. Or text us 40127.
Spice and everything nice. All right.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
6 minutes to 7. What other headlines do you have, City?
Well, AG 6, this is Business Daily. Wider watch over tender billions. Apparently, one of the requirements that we've had when it comes to public procurement was that you only needed to report to the office of the AG to seek permission if the tender was 5 billion shillings. Up to 5 billion. Below 5 billion, then you could, so should we say, do as you saw fit. Now, the argument has also been that what clever, wily maneuvering government officials and government agencies would do to break down the procurement. So each procurement did not reach that threshold of 5 billion. So now, what the AG is seeking is to lower it from 5 billion to 500 million. Now, one of the things that has brought this to light, for instance, is if you look at the KEMSA, what they refer to as the irregular procurement, okay? KEMSA split the tenders and awarded contracts worth 7.8 billion, which is, of course, above the threshold and which should have been reported to the AG before it was issued out, okay, to 102 firms without notifying the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority, PPRA. For instance, the details, commitment letters issued were worth 7.8 billion. Value of goods received, 7.632 billion. Amount paid to suppliers, 4.2712 billion. Outstanding amount, 2.919 billion. Okay? Now, the source is the Office of the Auditor General.
Right.
That's the reference point. So they've realized to put a halt to this particular mode of activities. Okay. Yes, I was thinking of the word shenanigans and I thought it's overused. What do? simply lower the threshold. Yes, so instead of 5 billion, it is 500 million, which is a lot of money though.
500 million.
Yes.
From 5 billion to 500 million.
Yes, meaning,
It's
What?
10%.
no, yes. You know, she's right.
That's.
Yeah.
But
So now,
Eh.
anything below 500 million, you don't have to tell the AG. The moment it goes beyond 500 million, you tell the AG. Remember, it was 5 billion before. Yes. They're proposing to make this into law.
Wow.
Yep.
The AG will be kept busy.
Very busy.
Those projects worth 500 million are, many. Those that are worth 501 million and above are many. They're quite many.
What I fail to see here is what is going to stop those who are breaking it down from breaking the 500 million down. If you could break down 5 billion, what stops you from doing the same here? So that it's a
It's a billion shillings,
but you break it into 100 million, 100 million, 100 million. What stops them? But let's wait and see. I'm sure there are a raft of measures that will be put in place to ensure that this is also curbed.
Okay.
Okay. Lifestyle.
Big issues.
You know, this thing keeps changing. Huh? There was a time when public procurement required the end user to have the last say, as in, you're the one who's procuring, you're the one who says, no, this is what we need.
Yeah.
Oh, that changed. And at some point, it was the CEO who had the last say. And you wonder, excuse me? CEO having the last say.
Yeah.
Do you see the kind of worms you're opening here?
The chief executive officer, anyway. I mean, the procurement manager can say all those things.
But so the person who actually ordered, who needs it, actually doesn't have a final say. So here we are having new sets of rules. I'm certain that by the time we get to the middle of the year, we'll have
things,
new changes.
Talking about the law, so this is a week that's going to be very busy in terms of the county assemblies around the country, because they'll be falling over themselves to either pass or reject the BBI bill. Now, remember we had a caller on Thursday who was telling us about the Siaya, and he's a resident of Siaya. He said, so our county assembly went ahead and passed this thing, and he was questioning the public participation element in that. Now, experts have actually come out to say, that issue of public participation, you need to give it time. There is likelihood of people going to court to challenge the process of county assemblies passing or approving the BBI bill if they have not conducted sufficient public participation.
The argument has been for the longest time, if you listen to people who come from the Mount Kenya region, why are you discussing something in details and we don't know what these details are?
We haven't seen it.
We haven't seen it. We haven't had time to interrogate it. So you expect us to vote, and we really don't know what it is that you're telling us to vote for. Now, this argument follows an even early argument. Please, can you ensure that you publish these things so that they are available for anyone who wants to find it?
It would be said that the intent is to do just that, which we see playing out now. Rush the process, don't give anybody time to think about it, and vote on it with an affirmative without having thought through the process.
Someone somewhere may have issued that advice. In my opinion, they are making a decision that is going to come back to bite them. Let people have it available, for heaven's sake. Meet that threshold. People feel so that the argument of we haven't seen it is done away with.
But there are two things. There's public participation in lawmaking, in passing of a bill, and then there's civic education before the referendum. Okay? Now, civic education is where the entire whole population will need to discuss it before they go to vote. Public participation is in the county assembly saying we have received it, it has gone to the necessary committee. The committee now is going to look at it and then bring its report to the the county assembly committee, their full house. How do they do it? Just like they did with the vetting of Anne Mwenda Kananu in Nairobi. You have invited, you have said you can write, you can email, you can do this and the other, and you say we received 1 or 2 emails. There was no sufficient public participation. There's no threshold for the number of people. The other thing about
there's
this
a threshold as far as the process is concerned.
The process is concerned.
Yes.
Must be seen to have ticked the box.
Yes.
But you see, at the same time, even if the county assemblies look at this bill, so you're having conversation with the public on what are your views on this particular bill. It is either people are saying, I don't like the bill, or I have not seen the bill, or I support the bill. And that's the only thing that the county assembly can do. They cannot go back and say, okay, so there are people who don't like this particular element of increasing the number of members of parliament. You cannot open this bill. So as it's being brought to the county assembly, it's a county assembly to discuss it, either to pass it as is or to reject it as is. So public participation in this particular case is for what benefit?
You see, what I'm talking about here is not even public participation. I am talking about public awareness. They've heard of the BBI. Why? Because the BBI team went around the country talking about these things. Rule of thumb, surely, when you've gone around, you tell people about it. Now, what did they do? They held rallies to talk about it. Rallies to talk about it. Good. Okay. That's public awareness. Really public, really awareness. However, what is so difficult in making the document public so that people can actually read it? I mean,
Making it available for folks to read it.
let people read it. Let them say what they want to say. Now, I'm certain that the reason why it hasn't been made that available, there are reasons behind it. But you know, my point of discussion and my threshold is when we change our fiduciary issue, banknotes. That public, for me,
It was beautiful.
it takes you
yeah.
couldn't say you were not informed.
Everybody knew. Even those who didn't know knew.
You were told
So,
so many days remaining. They kept at it until, and then a little time was given, but they kept at it. So you couldn't say you didn't know.
Sure.
Now this one, people will say they don't
didn't
know.
They've not seen the fine line. They've not seen the nitty-gritty of the
And when
details,
people
so-
say they don't know, that is an avenue that can be exploited fully. Right. But on the other hand, those who are pushing this agenda know more about the details than we do.
Yeah.
It's like we are poking in the dark here.
It would appear so. All right. One thing that has come front and center: lifestyle diseases rise as the public shuns native dishes. Forgotten foods are highly nutritious with antioxidants that would help fight non-communicable diseases. But nutrition experts are leading the charge to get Kenyans to take up eating more indigenous foods to control the rise of non-communicable diseases and malnutrition. Of course, one of those big ones is cancer. Another one, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and obesity. And these are all pointing to the need for a healthy diet. And we've seen a rise in these diseases across the country, no less. Many of the required nutrients are found in native foods, and it seems that people are still shunning these foods for the more processed foods. Unfortunately, this is happening. It's on the rise, and they've sent out an alarm to say, folks, we actually need to go back to nature and eat the foods that nature has provided for us, because we're seeing more and more people getting sick with diseases that they can actually prevent, or diseases that they can actually heal from really quickly. It's not happening, unfortunately. Fruits and vegetables, traditional vegetables as well. They've been classifying these things that have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. But the problem is that lifestyle diseases are on the rise, and it's not just in the urban centers. Now even seeping into the rural centers, more and more people. When we saw last year that the cancer numbers had risen, we're seeing those rising even higher now. Diabetes, a big deal, and we're looking at diabetes type 2, right? So not the one that you're born with, but the one that you get later on in life because of an improper diet. So the call from nutrition experts is that folks
Let's go back to
roots.
this.
Literally. Go back
And it's
to
a
the
big
roots.
issue. It's not just urbanization, because when you hear lifestyle, you think, okay, urbanization, so people are
Right.
not exercising, people don't have access to these foods, they have more and more access to processed foods. It's actually happening also in the rural areas.
Yep.
Like in Makueni County, because this story really focuses on Makueni County, they say cases of diabetes rose from 9,081 in 2016 to last year, there were 24,605 recorded cases of diabetes. That's a very high number.
It is. 13,000 cases in 4 years.
That's a very, very high number, because now you're talking about more and more people now needing to be, careful, to be watching what they're doing. Cases of hypertension are also on the rise. Cases of cancer also on the rise, and it's high. It's pretty high. I think that's then another conversation, that all these things that we talk about, Ministry of Health, talking about nutrition, talking about public health, preventative measures, putting a lot of focus on that, and whether the ministry actually does that. So, two different conversations. Time for us to take another break at 13 minutes to 7. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We're looking at the newspaper headlines, looking at the big stories that are covered in the papers today. We'll be looking at more in the coming minutes. Good morning.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
This February, Sarit Your City brings you Seasons of Love. From the 4th to the 14th of February, explore and celebrate love at our new complex, where we shall have special activities for your loved ones and family, including a Valentine's Fair, Sana Art Display, couples photo booth, and love wheel. What's more, you can enjoy a variety of local and international retailers, restaurants, eateries, and entertainment facilities such as cinemas and a bowling alley for a fun and wholesome experience. Tune in to Spice Drive with Monique from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. every weekday for more information, plus the chance to win dinner vouchers at Sarit Your City.
From 1902, the Standard Group has transformed to help steer the ship in the right direction and become one of the leading media houses in Africa. With 4 TV channels, 3 radio stations, robust digital platform, and numerous progressive initiatives, we are everywhere our audiences are. We don't just bring content, but content that inspires and motivates the people who've supported us over the years. It is the pillar that will forever cement and uphold our heritage as the Standard Group. The Standard Group. It's our future's heritage.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, 11:07. There's a man who killed his pregnant wife and 2 sons in Embu, and is being held by police. 32-year-old man being held for the killing of his 2 sons and his 5-month pregnant wife on Saturday at Kiamukuyu village. He's said to have locked his house before savagely killing his 28-year-old wife and the 2 boys who are aged 10 and 5. Police say when they arrived at the scene, they found the man, who was violent at the time, locked inside, but they managed to break the door and subdue the man, who was armed with bows and arrows. The suspect is locked up at Gedeteri police station. The sister to the suspect recalled how they spent the better part of Saturday together on their farm, and on returning to their home, he started behaving oddly. Modoni told the Standard that her younger brother seemed restless when they returned home. As she left, her brother pushed her outside and locked the door from inside. She raised the alarm and relatives responded, but they could not access the house. This happened in a span of a very few minutes. You've spent the day in the farm, come back, and then the man just goes berserk and does all these things, and there was no indication of what it is that was leading him to this. He wasn't saying, this is the reason I'm doing this. Nothing.
Are we not back to that discussion we've been having about the mental health of the citizens of this country?
That's the point.
And this is what is being reported.
Yep.
Do we really know of how many other cases? This is something we really need to perhaps ask our audience to tell us if they have heard or if they know of cases where these bizarre activities, where people are killed, or just something that previously wasn't there has been witnessed. Because clearly, this problem is beyond what we're actually saying here. Somebody kills his pregnant wife and children. No. Something really is wrong. Something is really very, very, very wrong.
I'm looking at this case, though, and I'm saying that this ended in death, right?
Deaths.
Yeah,
Imagine.
this ended in deaths. the violence or the nature of his behavior obviously did not start with this incident.
No.
It just means that we see a conclusion because lives were taken. But it must have, I mean, just from the details of this story, it must have been that this woman, because she's 28 and has a 10-year-old child by the same man, she's lived in this situation for 10 years. And unless it's something that just kind of crept up on him in terms of his behavior, but is looking at a situation of instability that these children and this woman lived in. This was the culmination of all of that. So what am I trying to say is that there are very many situations currently where people are living in a very unstable place, having to operate in instability, that unfortunately now we are seeing that the way out of it for a lot of people who feel this frustration then is death. And I think that's what needs to be looked at right now. I think these stories are being reported when lives have already been taken. And the very, very important to look at the processes that people are going through. The instability is now in a place where, if not curtailed, if not taken care of, if interventions not being established, we're not going to be able to handle it. Really not. So, I mean, here it ended in death, and so you have the story. The situations that people are going through cannot be pretty. That's all.
Yeah. It's a sad one. And when the president commissions a report, and the report is then presented to him or to the health ministry, and it says declare this thing a national emergency, and the health ministry does not, then questions need to be asked of the health ministry.
Absolutely. And
so are you saying that you disregarded the opinion of experts that you had actually tasked with the job of telling you how the situation is? They come back and the first recommendation number 1, declare mental health a health emergency. And you don't. It says, okay, so let's look for a piece of land here so we can go build a new Madare hospital there. What else are you doing to address this?
There's a certain level of incongruence between what needs to be done and where priority is being placed. It just doesn't make sense here, because at the end of the day, if something emergency by nature means that you don't have time to plan for it, right?
Yep.
By definition, that you must do something about it now, or we're going to get to the place. And then the very same people will be asking questions later. How did we get here? Yeah. Why is this such a rampant thing? Why are so many people dying at the hands of their own family members? Well,
we need our development partners to come in and help. And that's what we'll get.
Okay, so the Kenya National Union of Teachers has sued TSC boss Nancy Macharia once again.
Okay.
So I guess she's got a long list of these ones. But at the same time, more than 33,000 teachers are competing to fill half the number of promotion vacancies advertised by the TSC last year. The number excludes, of course, members of the KNUT, which has had a frosty relationship with the TSC. KNUT members were not considered for the promotions, owing to a protracted disagreement between the union and the TSC over the evaluation criteria. Interviews will take place between today and February 19th before the hearing of a case in which the teachers union has sued the TSC chief executive for contempt of court, and that starts the week after that. So there's still drama here. Promotions are actually taking place. KNUT has been locked out. KNUT has sued the TSC boss. However, that court case will take place after the interviews for the promotions, for which TSC teachers are the only ones who are privy to this. So, menagerie going on here, man.
Okay. There's a gentleman who was fired from his job, but now he has been awarded 729,000 shillings.
Okay.
He was fired on the grounds of being an alcohol addict. He used to work for Mumia's Sugar Company, and he used to work in the lab. So he says, you know what? It is this employer who got me addicted to alcohol because of the nature of my work. Because this guy says his work entailed testing alcoholic substances and sitting for hours in rooms filled with alcoholic fumes, which contributed to his addiction and later led to the sacking. During the process of distillation, we do an organoleptic test to ascertain the quality of liquor produced. This meant that I smelled and tested samples. He said distillation lab technicians who worked at the Miller's ethanol plant He can produce up to 22 million liters of ethanol in a year. I could even get intoxicated from the lab order. Now, what happened is, he kept being drunk. At one point, he was actually given a shock cause letter. He was taken for rehab by his employer, and I get to a point where he was now dismissed. But now he's gone to court and said, you see, it's okay, I was dismissed, I was being subjected to all this. But the root cause of my alcoholism is my work. So really, you guys ought to compensate me.
I would not have been doing this.
Yeah, I have lost a livelihood, I have lost my work, I have lost all these things. It was wrong and unfair to terminate the employment of Mogaka, this is according to the judge, while he was still at the rehabilitation center. Indeed, he would, in an appropriate cause, be entitled to damages for wrongful exposure to harmful substance, which led to his alcohol addiction, which was misconstrued to be a misconduct.
And indeed, he was forced to do this work against his will, and he had been working here all these years against his will.
No.
He didn't know he was working in an establishment that had this sort of thing.
But he didn't expect to be fired for it.
He didn't expect to be fired for being drunk.
It seems to have been accepted.
And why is he the only one who was drunk? Was he the only person working here? Was he the only one working in that section?
No, he's not.
Was he the only one who was exposed to?
No, he's not. He's probably also not the only one who was taken to rehab. That tells you that this job has its own inherent dangers. And the company acknowledges and appreciates. That's why it's even taking them to rehab. Now, when somebody is in rehab, and then you go ahead and dismiss them because they're in rehab and they're for being drunk. I mean, now there you're saying, come work here, fall sick as you work. I will take care of you briefly, and then I'll fire you. Yeah, it's unfair.
Because you're saying I'm not.
You can say he was not forced, yes, but the employer has a responsibility
to take care of them, because you know that they're going to come in contact with this substance. In fact, you require them to come in touch with this substance on a regular.
And the job must be done.
What I was hoping I would hear is why it is that the regulatory authorities that ensure that safety measures required in such an industry were not in place. Because if you're producing ethanol, we know what it is. It's not something new that has suddenly entered our shores. We know what it is. And this isn't the only establishment that produces this sort of product.
Yep.
So, what are the required standards for such an operation to have? Do they meet the standards? That, to me, is the discussion. Then if they don't, why are they still operating?
Yeah.
Why are we discussing people being taken to rehab? Why should they go to rehab in the first place? Why are they not protected against the very thing that makes them go to the rehab?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, because even when you go to rehab, my friend, you have been affected.
You already have a problem.
You have been affected.
And
you
rehab
have been turned into an alcoholic.
You are. But also, there's something you need to understand about alcoholics. There are people who are predisposed towards alcoholism. There are people whose system can actually not withstand alcohol. And they don't need large quantities for it to have an adverse effect. Now, such a person should never be in contact with anything alcoholic at all.
Completely.
Yes.
Keep it right here for more conversations. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
Okay, guys, it's that morning. An accident now on Langata Road just after the bypass, and it's causing a snarl up there. Langata Road all the way through towards the Timor roundabout. That one, unfortunately, happened. And this is in addition to the accident that happened on Langata Road last night. And so that was being cleared up when this one happened. So Langata Road, if you don't have to be on it, please do not. Thika Road, we have a couple of accidents that happened here this morning, causing traffic to move very, very slowly on Thika Road. Another one overturned along Outer Ring Road near Allsops. Please, caution, guys. Right around the barracks on Langata Road is where you see the bulk of the traffic. Let's look at Mombasa Road now. It's very slow all the way from the SGR, and traffic has built up all the way past General Motors heading into the city. Okay, so guys, the roads are slippery. The rain is still pelting down. We need you to be as careful as possible. All right, coming out of Westlands, also slow as you get into the city centre. everywhere is traffic already and the roads are slippery. I'm going to repeat. However, you can talk to us, Spice of MKE on Twitter. You get stuck somewhere, let us know. You find an alternate route, let us know that as well. Text as well on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
2.5 minutes after 7. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's The Situation Room. We thank you very much for joining us. This is the second hour of the show. We're now live on KTN Home, as well as being live on Spice FM and online, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. We always begin the hour with today's proverb with City Muga.
When there is peace in the community, the chief does not carry a shield.
When there's peace in the community, the chief does not carry a shield. Mm-hmm.
Focus on the shield and the many forms and presentation that a shield can have. Must it be the physical item that we refer to as a shield? Mm-hmm. Might it be people who shield this individual?
Mm-hmm.
And the list goes on.
So when there's peace, the chief can walk around freely.
Good point. Does not require protection. Mm-hmm. Visible protection. One could even argue that just by being chief, the people around him are his protection.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So a lot has happened over the weekend in terms of, this thing that we are now calling siasa. Okay. Many meetings have been held, many statements have been made, many promises, new promises are being made now. We are in the season of promises, Ndu. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So one of the things that we heard, and I was so excited, I was giddy with excitement, and I said, wow, this is great, because we heard from the Deputy President that 100 million shillings has been promised to the youth of Mombasa to at least help them, get on with businesses, start things, kind of a monetary injection into maybe what does not exist or, what does exist that has been flailing in terms of business. And I thought this was very interesting because it's great. He said this amidst many other things, where he talked about, the validity of the SGR moving, or rather the port moving from Mombasa to Naivasha, and talking about whether this made sense for the country. And I think one of the things that he even said was, are we really going to move the sea from Mombasa to Naivasha? I'm going to hope that he was being facetious there. But what happened as a result of that is there was a lot of cheering and there was a lot of applause in terms of what he said. It would seem as though he came back from an earlier position that he had, whereby the SGR and the movement of the port and these things was a good thing, and it was a good development in terms of Kenya's economy and what he was able to do. But it would appear now that he has taken the side of disappointment and discouragement when it comes to this development agenda, and said, you know what, telling the youth of Mombasa, I have your back. And having your back in this sense means that I'm going to give you 100 million shillings to be able to sort out yourself.
For each constituency.
It's great.
Across the country.
Yeah, across the country. It's great. But my mind went immediately to, where is this money going to come from? City, you're the one who normally has problems with zeros. 100 million. 6 zeros after 100. So I thought to myself, where is this money coming from? So I started to do the math. I said, okay, let's assume that it is charitable. Or is there a fund in the Vice President's office that is
No, I mean, what? You see, he's talking about it in the event he becomes president,
Doesn't matter.
so it'll be government money, okay?
It's
Going to be a project.
Okay.
Same
So
way we
when I
have
become
CDF.
president-
The same way we have CDF. So we'll be having a couple of funds. We'll have CDF 100 million shillings per constituency, and that's what he's saying. So the same way we have CDF going to every constituency 100 million shillings, we're also going to have a parallel fund of 100 million shillings per constituency going to benefit the youth,
And this cannot be now.
the hustlers.
This cannot be now.
In my government,
This cannot be now. Still your government, man. It's part of the president. This cannot be now. My question is,
if elected
this
president.
if this is such a good thing, it's a wonderful thing, if you ask me, a great initiative to be able to set out funds across constituencies for young people. We keep talking about them being the bedrock of the economy and their responsibility when it comes to then lifting this country economically, because they are the majority of the population.
Yeah.
Now, if that responsibility lays so heavily on their shoulders, why then would it not be done now in terms of providing these kinds of funds to make sure that, I know we talk about political expediency and things like that, but had it been so important, is it not something that should have been established already?
I don't get your argument.
Why do we have to wait until if and when he becomes president? If it's so important to understand how important
it is very
it is
important,
now,
but then you have to
why
also,
can't it be done now?
You have to listen to the second part of his statement where he is no longer has influence in this government.
Oh, doesn't he?
Yeah, BBI has taken away the focus from this government, and he's not part of this, right? So if you think about that, that's why he's saying, I want to become president, and this is what we're going to do for the hustlers. This is what we wanted to do anyway in the first place. And in the second term, this second story says here, Jubilee has failed in its second term. The things that we wanted to do in our second term, we started doing them, and then kidogo, BBI. And now BBI is the primary focus of everything. Instead of focusing on the hustlers, instead of focusing on what needs to be done for the youth, for the ule mwananchi mdogo wa kawaida pale chini, the one who is waking up every day and wondering, so what do I need to do to get my hustle going? And this is where the focus would be. However, if you elect me president, this is what we're going to do, okay? Instead of just looking at it as a one-off kind of thing where people come to visit the deputy president or the president and they're given cash, we will have money coming to the counties, to every constituency, and this money is going to be 100 million shillings, equivalent to the CDF, and it's going to benefit the youth and the hustlers.
It's another carrot horse situation, if you ask me, that you're dangling things in front of people that you should actually be implementing regardless. We saw the same situation coming out of his same mouth during the elections that took place in Kibra, where he said, you know what, elect this man and we will build schools in Kibra. Are you kidding me? These are schools that should be built anyway because we see education being a right of children. And you know that what you have currently is not enough. But then you hang it in front of people and you say, okay, we'll give you this if you vote a certain way. And I don't think that people should continually be put on this altar of, this sacrificed on this altar of vote me in and then I will do this. Things that should be done anyway. Did we see that, so he says he's not in a position, did we see that he tried to institute such a fund before? Did we see that he said, okay, in the first half of this presidency, in the middle of the second half, did we see that these are concerns that he brought about and said, these are actually things that we want done, that I really care about the people? We did see promises, unfortunately, that have not been fulfilled. Even when we talk about youth and keeping them engaged, we heard stories of stadia having been completed or would be completed in the next 6 months. I believe 2 years have passed since that statement or those promises were made. So what are we talking about here? Over and over again telling Kenyans, I promise to do this if you. No, we should be looking at a situation where you do your job. Do your job. And don't come and tell Kenyans, you know now, if you vote me in, I will do this. No, don't do it. I'd rather you come and say, I have done this, and on that, give me another opportunity. That's what we should be talking about. And over and over again, and the wool is pulled over the eyes of Kenyans and falling into this trap where people say, you know what, I'll do it for you should you put me in this position. They should stop it, I beg. It's not.
Are you saying that politicians should not be making promises?
If they know they can't keep them, they shouldn't make them. And they know.
No, but they think they can keep them.
No, they know very well that they can't.
They think
and
they can keep 100 million.
They know.
Only 29 billion shillings.
The same man also said only 7 billion. 7 billion.
Yeah, but that was only 7. This is only 29 billion shillings, and you can create this fund and institute it in law.
Why hasn't it been done? If it's only that and it's so easy to do, why? Because this, by the way,
It's
this
not-
story
it
of
sounds
the
as
youth,
if- It
this
sounds as
story
if
of
you have a problem with somebody coming up with an idea and asking them, why didn't you come up with that idea yesterday?
no.
Look,
I don't. No.
Yesterday
I'm
is
But
yesterday.
saying-
but what
Today is
idea is he
today.
coming up with really?
What's new?
What is this idea that is coming up with?
This one of supporting the youth.
That
this
is- that
of supporting
story is
the
as
youth
old as time.
Old as time. It's as
For
old
100
as
million
dirt.
shillings?
It's as old as time, even if it's
old
2
as
million.
The
dirt.
mechanics.
It's as
No,
old as
the
dirt.
focus on the youth
When has this
has
conversation started?
look, the youth, something in 206 we had this youth enterprise fund that was started.
Yeah.
Other things morphed into it. Forget department, an entire ministry was created specifically for the youth. Specifically. Then you have counties, county allocation. Within the county allocation, they have funds specifically targeting the youth. Now, this same group of people, the youth, okay, don't seem to have benefited immensely from all these projects that have been there. Even if this was started in 2006, most government projects are not intended to actually take place during the lifetime of one presidency. They're supposed to be things that you start and hopefully other people come in and continue with it to see it to its logical conclusion, because times also change and things change and needs also change. Now, we do not know just what all these enterprises that are started in the Kibaki era, in the Uhuru and Ruto era, targeting the youth, an audit report of what these things have done and how far they have gone. I haven't come across it personally. There are people who may have, so they can tell us about it. Now, all of a sudden 100 million shillings
Can be available.
in the future is going to solve a problem that hasn't been solved since all this focus on the youth has been in place all this time.
Okay, it hasn't been solved. Are you saying that we stop? We start looking for new ways of getting this done?
It's not new. That's the point I'm trying to do.
No, listen.
It's not
What
new.
you have been having has not worked, like you're saying, because your conclusion here is that you do not know, therefore you don't think it has worked. The Youth Enterprise Development Fund, the money that was set
Everything
aside,
else that has to do with the youth.
Women Fund, there's many others.
Oh, there are many.
All these funds, they've done their small bits and pieces, okay? But people like City Muga do not feel the impact,
No.
the overall impact.
I don't know,
There are
not
people
feel.
here who
I
are
don't know of an audit that has been presented to show that this is what we've done for the youth and here is where we are. Have you come across it,
There
Eric?
are people here who are called hustlers, okay? The small traders, border operators, handcut pushers, grocers, and all these people who need to be given access to money, all right? So what is it that we need to do? How are we going to do this so that we can empower people who want to start businesses? And Ruto has thought and seen, okay, one way we can do this is if we reinvigorate the same way we have seen the success of CDF in many constituencies. CDF has built new school gates, CDF has dug toilets, CDF has done new school streams, CDF has done this and the other. CDF has done some projects that people see are tangible projects. How about we do the same way, take money directly to the people and have them access this money? So this 100 million shillings every year is a pool from which people can borrow money so they can start their businesses or they can grow their business.
How is it different from all the other funds that had been set up for the youth?
And
How is it different?
in
The
addition
youth was
to
supposed to
that-
draw from it directly.
Yeah.
What is new? And also, he may say he doesn't have power now, but that was not always the case.
What
He
was
has been
wrong
he has been deputy president from 20 what?
13.
13.
Yes. So all that time, just a simple audit. Okay, this is what you've done. Here is where we are. Let me take your view. Let's inject this to push this agenda further. What are we talking about? Poppycock. There's nothing new about this. It's a political statement. It is a political maneuver, and it's understandable. People, when they're politicking, make promises. We understand. But unfortunately, from this individual,
We've heard it before.
unfortunately, he has made many promises before.
We've heard it before. And this is what I'm
Unfortunately.
saying. If this is such a good idea, and because look at it, I love it. Because look at the Constituency Development Fund, right? Look at it in the way in which it is constituted. It has helped very many people. There are children who've been able to go to school and be kept in school as a result of that. Bursaries and things like that have come out. The other day we saw high schools having been completed just because of this. So in the infrastructure of the idea, it's actually brilliant. What I am saying is, even if it is an idea that came upon you in your dream, celestial beings dropped from heaven and came and told you, this is actually what you should do. Very good. Has it been taken to the point where it can be turned into policy and made into a reality? Have we heard that? What we hear is you take it as an idea to people who you know are desperate at that point to hear anything and would, catch the crumbs of what it is that you're talking about. Making a promise to them in a nature and a manner in which you've done before. And we have seen that these things have not come to fruition. Anybody with their eyes open would say, this is just another opportunity for this guy to tell us things that are not going to come to be. If it was something that you say is so good, what stops you? We could say a year and a half. What stops you from saying, I am pushing this now? Show us now that it actually can be done. And don't hang it over the heads of people like that proverbial carrot, where you say, okay, so I can do this if you vote me in. It should not have conditionalities. Do it. Do it anyway.
Actually, in politicking, there has to be conditions.
Yeah, that's fine. But what I'm
There
saying
has
is that
to be
here
people.
you're looking at people, and that's I'm saying to the people, to people today, look at it for what it is. If it has to come along with the trappings of politicking, look at it as that. Don't look at it as something that will actually be, if you've seen evidence that it has not happened in the past, coming from the same individual who made promises that did not come through. That's what I'm saying.
You're also making a blanket statement here, Ndu. A number of promises that were made by this duo when they were campaigning and they became president came to pass.
Like, I'm waiting for you to tell me this.
There's a fund, I'm trying to remember the name of this fund. Remember when they were campaigning in 2013 and they said, guys, if we actually come out and vote and we don't go to a runoff, the money that could have gone to a runoff, and they said a certain amount of shillings, will form a fund, and that fund was actually established. They said, what we want to do is when we get into leadership, we will ensure that we make it a government policy that 30% of all local contracting by government will go to women and youth. They came up with that. They even came up with a policy, and there's something called AGPO. That was implemented. Promise made, promise fulfilled. In terms of the management of the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, they did not just say, okay, this was a Kibaki thing, let it die. No, the Youth Enterprise Development Fund is still operating to date. The other day, last year, we had a interview here with a man who was a former chairman of the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, Ronnie Osumba. And he told us the work that they had done. We find you do this, you do the other. You've actually found that very many youth have come and benefited from this. And there are reports with the Youth Enterprise Development Fund that show you this is what the money that we've disbursed. This is the money that has gone out to the youth. This is the impact that it has had in the community. And this is how much. Those reports are there. So it's not that they have made promises and not fulfilled.
Okay, I take back that.
There are
view.
some
Beautiful.
promises that have been made. There are some promises that have been made that have not been 100% fulfilled in terms of develop the stadia. Not all stadia have been fulfilled, but some stadia have been opened.
Right.
Some stadia are still being constructed. As we speak, actually, they have accelerated completion of stadia.
Beautiful.
So this kind of ideas are there. So when he thinks, all right, we've got to start thinking of a different way of engaging with our people. We've got to think of different ways of doing things. And one of the things that we need to do then is look at the way we have a fund called CDF and it goes straight to a constituency. Let's have another fund that goes straight to empower youth, not just youth, but small scale businesses. And this is for people to access interest-free loans to raise their standards of living so that you can then start a business. That is something that he's saying. This is something that we need to look at. This is something that we need to focus on.
Absolutely. My thing is, look, it's beautiful. It's very good. And I'm not taking away from the merits of that. I think it is great. What I am saying is there is absolutely nothing. If truly your interest is on the people of this country, these people that we're talking about, these hustlers, these small business people, etc., if your interest really is in them. There is nothing that stops you right now from starting to look at those ideas and look at the ways in which such things can be implemented. What I am saying is that it is unfortunate that it would appear that you're telling people that this wonderful thing we can do, we will only do it if you vote me in as president, which is wrong. It needs to stop.
No.
If you're interested in really developing people, why do we want to leave a flurry of projects that were unfinished? We talked about things that they started, they were not able to finish. What are you showing people? That you can start something and stop it, start something and stop it, and then you're going to hold it over their heads and say, you know what, actually, if you put me in this position of ultimate power, then I can actually finish it for you. No.
Do the world over.
Do it.
The world over.
Finish it. The finishing power of very many leaders, unfortunately, cannot be seen. And that's what I'm saying. Finish it and show people that you have the goodwill to actually complete certain things. That you have the goodwill to say, these things that I said I'm going to do, let me actually do them and raise your economic profile. As opposed to saying, okay, yeah, well, that didn't happen because I was pushed out of government. Push that one aside. That didn't happen, but here I have this brand new shiny thing for you to look at. Let me implement it, but I'll only do it if you put me in as president.
No.
It is wrong. Nope.
If you're talking about politics, the language of politicians is precisely what you've just described, and it isn't Kenyan. It is the world over. If you cannot talk to people and tell them what it is you think you can do and change, my friend, then why are you even presenting yourself to be voted in? You must tell people what you think you can do. You must tell them. This is how it works, by the way. I will do this differently. I will present this. It is the language of all politicians. From the longest time, right from the time we got our independence, we were very clear about the three enemies we wanted to get rid of. We wanted to make sure people were healthy, wanted to make sure people were educated. All these things that we kept promising. Look, the truth of the matter is it has to be an ongoing thing. It's like a relay. Someone starts, the other one picks it up and moves along with it. Up to that point, from a political perspective, there is nothing the deputy president is doing that is untoward. My problem, if I may call it a problem, is this. You cannot, or actually you can, but we will then be forced to look at your track record. Something very simple called a track record. When you were in this position at this particular point in time.
What did you do?
And you see, here it isn't you as you, the deputy president, you as the presidency. Because it isn't as though the deputy president was as powerless as he claims to be now from the time they got into power. He wasn't. Now, the reality is this. It is one thing to promise before you get to that position. There's the reality of when you get there and the competing interests that you face. You see, sometimes it's not a problem of not doing, it's a problem of not communicating accurately. Why is it that politicians can't start and say, you know, this is what we plan to do? But now that we've started, we realize we're not going to do it this way. This is what we're going to do. Okay? No. Instead, you lump another promise on top of another promise. Then you look for another promise and lump it on top of the other promise. After a while, even if you don't provide a scorecard, people will audit it and ask, okay, you are the same person who told us this. And we didn't see it. So why should we now believe that if we didn't see that one, we will see this
Suddenly
one?
see this one. And that's what I'm saying.
Why should we believe it?
Let there be record of certain ones that were
But
completed.
Ndu, there's something you need to bear in mind here. Something you need to bear in mind. The deputy president has done a sterling job of ensuring that he's not fully associated with the Jubilee that came into power. Sterling job.
This is not his government.
No. He has provided a narrative of the hustler nation, which is now him moving away from this government, which he was part of, which according to him now doesn't quite work the way it should, and which has been hijacked. It's a narrative that has been accepted. So it's from this platform, when he makes a promise, all previous sins will have been forgiven, and this new promise will hold sway.
William Ruto is not speaking as Deputy President of the Republic. He is speaking as opposition leader in the Republic of
Does
Kenya.
he know that?
That's why he's speaking this way. That's why he's making promises that what he can do, which has not been accomplished by Uhuru and his brother Raila. Good morning, 7. Let's take a break. We'll be back shortly on KTN Home, on Spice FM and online.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. The weather with
It's still
Spice
coming down in
FM.
Nairobi at 17 degrees. We'll see highs of 23 today, and the chances of this going on through the day is what we'll see. It's raining in Nyeri at 16, highs of 21 and lows of 14. Cloudy conditions that could lead to rain in Nakuru at 16, highs of 26 and lows of 15. We're looking at mostly cloudy conditions in Eldoret at 14, going to highs of 23 and down to lows of 15. Kisumu is sunny at 19, highs of 30 and lows of 21. Mostly sunny conditions in Kakamega at 17, highs of 31 today. Highs of 31 also in Mombasa, where it's raining right now. It's mostly cloudy in Malindi at 27, going to highs of 31. Kampala's reading at 20, sunny conditions right now, highs of 31 and lows of 18. We're looking at lows of 26 in Dar es Salaam, and the heavy thunderstorms continue this morning, currently at 24, going to highs of 31. It's sunny in Johannesburg at 17, highs of 24 and lows of 16. Cloudy conditions in Lagos at 28, highs of 34 and lows of 26. And finally for now, in Kinshasa, clear skies at 22, highs of 32, coming back down to lows of 24.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
Okay, so today's that day where traffic is crazy, number one. Number two, it's raining, and then there are a number of accidents across the city. Thika Road, a couple of accidents happened there. Multiple vehicle accident on Langata Road this morning, and we've seen another one right around Outer Ring. So guys, the number one thing is to be careful. Langata Road is bad both ways. Right around past 1824, traffic towards Langata starts at the Wilson Airport. It is a glorious morning, isn't it? The rain is still coming down. And we see traffic on Mombasa Road headed out into the city, stops right around the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. Uhuru Highway is jam-packed, bumper to bumper, all the way into the CBD, out through to Westlands. So if you've not left and you don't have to, don't. If you're in it, it's going to be a while, regardless of where you're coming from today. But we ask you to be careful. The roads are still slippery. Spice of MKE. That's how you can get in touch with us on Twitter or text 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, it's 29 minutes after 7. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, broadcasting in Nairobi to Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi on Spice FM. We're countrywide on KTN Home, and we're worldwide online, Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and www.spicefm.co.ke. We are reviewing what's happened over the weekend, and this is a statement that was made by William Ruto. William Ruto, as some of you may remember, others may have forgotten, and it's our duty to remind you, was elected as Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya in 2017 for a second term since 2013's election. Now, he says that in this first term, the Jubilee administration was working very hard at laying the foundation for the future of the country, and they had started some work, they started some projects, they laid down the foundation for them. In the second term, now they were coming to finish that. But we must also say the truth. That's what he says. Our plan to create millions of jobs in the second term after laying the ground in the first term was put aside, and the priority became the BBI. He claims that SGR project has been hijacked by profiteers. the other projects that were meant to benefit the coast area, for example, the Dongo Kundu Special Economic Zone, implemented simultaneously to cushion the coast against adverse economic effects of the new railway system. But, as you very well know, the Dongo Kundu is burning slowly. It's not even taken off. So, he's saying, I want to be elected president in 2022, and this is what I'd like to do. When I come in, I become president. One of the great things that we want to do is to empower small businesses, who he calls the hustlers. And we shall set up a parallel fund, like the way we have a CDF fund with 100 million shillings per constituency going across the country. We have another one, which is going to call whatever he's going to call it, the Hustler Fund. 100 million shillings per constituency across the country, only 29 billion shillings a year in a financial budget. This is what is going to help benefit the people who are small-scale traders. And he says these are handcart pushers, grocers, border operators, people with small kiosks, those people who are looking at small business opportunities, but they require access to capital. You can go there, you can borrow interest-free, do your business, repay. This is what he wants to do if elected president.
Okay, so if he's not elected president, he now won't do it.
The other person who is elected president...
he won't be in a position to do it. Yeah. I mean, it's predicated on him being president. But remember...
He can push as a head of policy.
You see, what I hear is a lot of politicking, a lot of political speak. But there is deception and there's an absolute absence of truth in some of these statements. How do you say that you are planning to work on the 1 million job creation when the promise that you stated categorically at the time of campaigning was 500,000 jobs every year? How then do you condense it now to just 5 years have gone by, so after this one we're planning to create 1 million? Okay, how many jobs were created? How many jobs were created? I'm sure jobs were created, there's no question about it. Again, there's COVID. How can anything that wasn't done by this government suddenly be the problem of the BBI and the handshake? How can it possibly be when there's evidence that when the BBI was formed, the deputy president was exactly where he ought to have been deputy president, and he was part of the team that formed it. All of a sudden, it's like he doesn't know anything about it. He had no say in it.
I think unfortunately with current happenings, we run the risk of making it seem as if all operation will then be mashed into these last 2 years. And it's a very dangerous place to be in, because you want to basically tell Kenyans that, you know what, things failed only in the last 2 years. Things didn't go right because I was pushed out. I'm sorry, man, but you had 7 years before that to actually try and implement things and get them done. You had all this time to try and get it done.
How is it only
and
four?
now you want to make it seem as if things started going south when there was a handshake.
And 2018?
You want to make
handshake from March.
Okay, hold on. You want to make it seem as if things started going south when there was a handshake. You want to make it seem as if things didn't happen only because people stood on the steps of Harambe House and shook hands. That's the reason why things went wrong. I'm sorry, but you can't lay the blame on that. We need to understand that this time was much more than 2 years ago. It was much more than that. And during that time, you sat in a position where you could have made these things happen. And I'm going to say again, in as much as the politicking is happening and these statements are being made, Kenyans, the people to whom bear the brunt of things when they go wrong, upon whom the responsibility lies then to now make life better for themselves when things go wrong from a promise that has been made by the government. Kenyans, see it for what it really is. Demand. Why do you have to, somebody comes and says, I'll do this when I'm president. Meanwhile, you have things right now that can be running seamlessly, that can be running perfectly. A fund that has been set up by government whereby youth should be able to go and get what would enable them in their businesses then to thrive. Right now, it exists. What's wrong with making it better? What's wrong with making it seamless? Why, again, come and dangle something before Kenyans to make it, I beg you, dangle something before Kenyans that will make it seem as if all these things are not working, but I, the Messiah, am the one who can bring about new change.
Politically speaking, once you have created a distance between you and the government that you're part of, you are no longer to blame for everything that you are part of when it happened. Please understand.
Oh, I understand. And I'm saying Kenyans should understand that also
distancing
that he's
is very, very important. The only problem is, take the view that Deputy President Ruto becomes president. Unfortunately, this narrative that has been at the center of his campaigning will come to bite him for this simple reason. You can talk about the hustler nation, you being a hustler. My friend, when you're in power and you're a person of means,
You're not a hustler.
No. You are still spearheading the narrative, the hustle narrative. You will be seen by these very same people as being part of the
system.
Yes, you will be seen simply because you have means. Because you say hustler and you categorize them. But what is it that the recipients of this hustler message is the haves and the have-nots? They go beyond. You're talking about dynasty. It moves from being people whose parents were in the political elite. It comes down to people who represent those who have, those who seem to be economically better off than the others. This narrative, unfortunately, will come back and you will be part of those people who are seen to have as opposed to those who don't. Number one, everything that you say now will come back to haunt you because you raise expectations. There will be more than any human being can actually fulfill, but there'll be the expectation. This is the reality of politics and it'll come. It is far easier to be in the opposition in many ways because all you do is point out errors. That's all you do. Nobody really asks. Do you hear people asking the opposition to actually produce a scorecard of what they have done?
They've actually done.
No.
It's not the responsibility to perform.
No, their responsibility is to point out, state. Now, when you turn those tables and you are in power and others are in the opposition, that's scenario one. Scenario two, there are people who have been used to being in government. Now you take that position, you are going to be in the opposition. It is a very, very, very different position when you're actually in the government and you've taken the point of view that you are in the opposition. Very different from when you are genuinely in the opposition. Very, very different indeed. However, let the music play on.
Okay, so we are done, or maybe we're not, but aside from hoisting the messenger and putting him up there and wanting to flay him, let's look at the message. Is this a good way to go? Setting aside a fund and say 100 million shillings that goes across the country to each constituency and that will be accessed by small-scale traders for use in business. Is this a good idea? Is it not a good idea?
Eric, it isn't us who've put the messenger up there. The messenger has put himself up there.
Staked himself, man.
Yes, it isn't as though we created the message of the 100 million. No. It is someone who stated it and said that they'll be able to provide it as and when certain things happen. So you have said this is what you will do. You cannot expect something of that sort to be said and your track record when you had a position to change things. You can't expect that will not be brought into the discussion. It has to be.
And
if you couldn't do it then, what makes us believe that they won't do it now?
Okay, what is wrong with the message?
Exist. Oh, by the way, I told you, it's a beautiful idea.
Maybe it's not.
And I gave an example of the Constituency Development Fund that we have currently because if it's supposed to run kind of like it,
thing, by the way.
Then if you have systems that are running right now that could be worked on and made better.
You see, you start one discussion, you then introduce other elements that will be brought into the discussion just by virtue of that discussion. Other things have to be discussed. And you as the individual who said it, unfortunately, you cannot escape discussion. Because it is you who said it.
Of course. But like Ndu, you're telling us, as Kenyans, as we're looking at this kind of things, and we're looking at the messenger, let's say, all right, but it's a good idea, but you'd be the wrong person to implement it. Actually, but then we have to discuss, is it a good idea or is it not a good idea? That then the next thing we say
wrong. He could actually be the right person to implement it. I'm saying, why are we waiting? All this time, if it was a great, brilliant idea, why is it predicated on you becoming president? Why are we waiting?
But it's such a brilliant idea. Look, it's a campaign message. Give it that. It's a campaign message.
That's what Kenyans should
see. It's what people do during campaign times. I mean, look, we had a huge election in America just the other day, and people were saying left, right, center. Now, we want to see what they're going to do. The advantage that the Biden administration has is this, my friend. Their parliament, they control it. So it doesn't really matter what the Republicans think. They can vote through anything they want. You see, one advantage. But even with that advantage, let us see how they're going to implement these things that they said they're going to do. Look, speaking about implementing something and actually implementing it, two very different things. I am certain that the current government, when they were campaigning, meant what they said. Oh, yes.
Okay.
They felt this is something we ought to do. They got into power. That thing is actually not as easy as you think.
You know why I'm saying we look at the message? It's because I have serious issues with this message. It doesn't matter whether it's said by Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, 100 million shillings that will go to the constituency, blah, 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 blah. This is the way we keep talking about things here. Throwing money at the problem. The problem
throwing words that involve money at the problem.
Yes. And sometimes even throwing money, and this is how now money just goes and disappears. Because, money has been spent, 100 million shillings. Even if we talk about the CDF, and I have issues with CDF, can we actually justify the expenditure of 100 million shillings per constituency per year since the time CDF started? Go to any constituency and tell me how much money has actually gone to the CDF kitty in that constituency since the CDF was started. Can you look at that and say, okay, we can see 1 billion shillings worth of projects here. We can see 1 billion shillings worth of development. I can't. Or you tell me that you're going to put 29 billion shillings now, so that it's money that's available for small businesses to come and borrow. How? How are we going to make sure that then the hustler actually benefits from accessing this kind of fund? Why do we need to create this multiplicity of funds? We have a CDF fund here, we have a youth fund there, we have another hustler fund that's coming up, we have a women's fund, we have Why do we have to have multiplicity of funds? It doesn't matter whether it's Ruto or Uhuru or whoever says it. Why? Does that address our problems? And I think we need to get to a point where whichever politician is coming to talk to us, we're like, okay, so of what benefit? How exactly is that going to benefit me? Because we're looking at it from that, thing of throwing a small, we have 100 million shillings, people can come and access. How much would people be able to access in 100 million shillings in a constituency? What is going to ensure that they can actually benefit from this money?
The attention needs to be paid.
It could just be this whole thing of looking at the hustlers and saying, because we're going to have a new way of doing things, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to have 100 million shillings coming to every constituency.
Yeah, look,
we're going
all it was is telling people what you think you want them to hear at that point so they can pay you some mind. Look, let's just call it for what it is. In terms of how it's actually going to work, in terms of the existing infrastructure to actually make that which is existing work, it doesn't exist. It's not there. You've just said you have so many funds. What work has been done to make sure that they're actually operating well? The CDF itself, it has its holes here and there. What stopgap measures have been put in place to make sure that this thing actually flourishes, that it works, that the purpose for which it was intended is actually lived out? What has been done about that? So yeah, for me, it doesn't matter who the messenger is, but unfortunately, this particular messenger has come in this manner before. And that's what I'm saying. Should we not be able to hear what is being said? Should we not be able to hear what is being said? And the questions and demands be made. This one that we have right now, we have not been able to access it. One, it is not going across as we thought that it would. Why can't we fix it and make it work? And even better, this new idea that you have, what stops you from sharing those ideas today?
But you know something?
This self-made opposition that we're talking about now, put yourself into a corner. That's what's going to happen.
Actually,
what stops you from making those suggestions today?
Ponder for a second. Eric's perspective is something that perhaps we need to give a little thought. Huh? Let me tell you why I'm saying this. Huh? The amount of money that have been issued, whether it is CDF or to the counties, mind-boggling amounts. We've had this discussion before. Do we see a commensurate rate of development that equals the amount of money that the country has been spending on these things? The answer is no. Now, you cannot say that from the time the deputy president was the deputy president, before now he became not really deputy president, but more so opposition leader. There's that subtle change.
Yeah.
Well, not so subtle.
With the trappings of power.
Not quite there and all, etc., etc. Monies that were intended for the development of this country were being issued. CDF money on time. County governments were getting their money. So even as we think about the promises that were made, it isn't as though money wasn't there. The money was there. Mm-hmm. The discussion that Eric is bringing in really is that quiet, subtle point that sometimes we miss. when money is actually issued for what it ought to be doing, and those things are not done, we cannot blame the deputy president for that one. That's not his fault. It's not. If you're finding fault, let us attribute fault where it should lie. Our county governors, many have an excellent reputation of actually utilizing the monies they've been given for what they're supposed to. Many others have not. And there's a clear record of them not having done anything that even approaches what they have received from the time, or the county they've received since each of them was in power. Forget even succeeding someone, even if you knew what you've done with it. And it's in the billions of shillings. So sometimes one could even argue that if someone is looking at a new way of just focusing on the youth, it's perhaps with the realization that morphing the youth thing into CDF or morphing it into the money that goes to the county doesn't really solve this problem. Not really. And talking about a youth development fund, an amorphous national youth development fund doesn't seem to solve this problem.
No.
So why don't we just give the youth the money in the constituency? It is not a negative thing. Now, the discussion about the individual making it, totally different discussion. Totally different discussion. But as for the money, focusing on the youth, specifically brought to the constituency.
Brilliant.
If there is a structure through which this is supposed to happen, makes a lot of sense. However, let's broaden the discussion, shall we? Because Eric broadened it. When you look at CDF, if it were implemented as it ought to be, this national headache of the youth employment and youth funding and youth what have you, it could have been reduced significantly. Because you're talking about developing your own constituency, building. If it's a question of ensuring that youth have money, when you put into place these capital developments, these development projects that you have, surely they require doing, and in doing it, you require employment. Where do our MPs, where can they tell us, what can they tell us they have done with these funds to ensure that they, at their level, have increased youth employment? Let's come to the county.
Sustainability of the funds. So you go and do something, let this thing be something that is sustainable.
Yes, and if one project is, it can't be the same project year in, year out. You finish this project, you move on to the next one.
Yep.
But you engage the youth. Now, we don't hear this story. So if we are going to focus on the deputy president, let us focus on the broader argument that this particular discussion actually should bring into being. What ails our country? The malady that is always with us. Promises are made, funds are even provided, the results are next to nothing. Or what is there is in specific pockets of our constituency or counties, but for the rest of them, it's words, 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 and words. And if you visit the counties, many unfinished projects. That cannot come into the national discussion because that monies were given for those projects to be completed at the county level or at the constituency level, and that hasn't been done.
I think as you ask, what then ails us is one of the things that I'm thinking of is we don't interrogate some of these promises, because these promises are made, and they're made, blanket promise, like this and the other, and people go ahead screaming and they're like, yes, it's true, but you don't interrogate. So what exactly are you saying? We are going to build stadia across the country. So is the stadium the issue, the need? Is it where? So we're going to build stadium because the youth are youthful and they like to play and they'll do games, so they'll go in there. So then what? After that, then what? If we interrogated and asked, so what do you want to do with the stadia? You want to build stadia. All right. So the youth can then get these opportunities to train. Yes. Then what? Is there any structure that then develops them and ensures that they can earn a living from their sport? Okay. No. All right. So that one put aside. Don't tell us about stadia. Go questioning each and every one of these promises. When the DP is going around Mombasa and he's saying, okay, so what we want to do next is come up with, 100 million shillings CDF-like hustler empowerment fund across the country. We ask ourselves, is that what is really lacking? Is it only access to capital? Are there other ways in which we can get access to capital? This current government, right now, as part of the COVID-19 recovery economic strategy, is actually rolling out some interest-free loans. People can access, SMEs can access money through commercial banks. It's already been set aside. So how is that going? We should be asking ourselves these questions deeper than that and saying, okay, so if this is not working, or if this is working, why not build on it? And I agree with you. Why not have a conversation now that says this is what we'll build on, empowering the people right now? Why do we have to say at tomorrow, this will happen the days after, this will come in a couple of days before this? Why? Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to wait for next year? After September next year, when you're sworn in as president, if you're sworn in as president, that's when you'll start implementing these things. And then you're saying the other thing of distancing yourself from the failures of the administration, while at the same time going around saying, but we are the ones who did this and the other. So you want to ride on what you think are the gains of this Jubilee administration, but at the same time you want to distance yourself from what you think are the failures of the Jubilee administration. Or rural electrification. Just the same deputy president the other day was telling us this government has built has connected X number of households with electricity. This government has ensured that there's 100% transition from primary to secondary. This government has done this and the other. So he's basically taking pride in that. Share with the failures as well.
Exactly. You can't have your cake and eat it. And that's what I've been saying, is that there's so many things that can be done. Look, even apart from what government has been doing, when we're talking about the youth and how they can benefit, the same government, and I guess when there was still hand-holding and, the rants were still fresh and bright, you have many, many private sector organizations who've come into this as well and said, look, we're going to help. MasterCard Foundation, for example, giving 5 billion shillings over the next 5 years to be able to help out in things like this. So these things exist. What's wrong with buffering those things that already exist? But over and beyond that, and I agree, interrogation of these promises needs to be done. In the past, it has just been a promise is made, take it for all that it is, then we go with it. A promise is made, wonderful, based on that I'm going to vote this person in, and then you come and complain later when it's actually not done. Because when they're making these promises, are we thinking about what it is that they're actually saying? CT tells us all the time that the voting population is actually quite intelligent and quite clever and can figure this thing out. And I'm saying, look at it for what it is. Really think about what is being said, because these are the lives of Kenyans that are on the line. When these promises are being made, when you put somebody else into power, when you give somebody your vote, it is your life you're putting on the line. Your existence, your education, your business, your family, your children. That is what you're putting on the line. When you're giving somebody your vote, you're entrusting them with your life. And they're making promises which, if they don't come true, you're going to struggle all the more to make sure that you stay alive. And I'm saying, when they're making these promises, hear what they are saying. Hear also what they're not saying. And take it with a bag of salt, not just a grain. But then we know it's political speak. They're not going to change the way in which they speak, because they still feel that they can make a promise and Kenyans are going to vote because they made a promise. Cut it out. Look at it for what it really is and make a decision based on the truth that you know to be. That's what needs to happen.
Talking of political solutions, the BBI is a political solution. And they are also making promises. Now, remember, in an earlier time when we were looking at the news, we were saying there is this little detail of what the BBI contains, the content being made public. It's neither here nor there. It's here, it's not there, it's good. Look, even if people don't read, and the majority of people won't read it, that's just the truth. They will not read it. However, they still want to talk about it. The fundamental difference is that we are told there's a document. Here, someone has spoken. Okay? Now, politics in this country consists of words. If I may also use a Kenyan word, majorly, okay? It consists of words. People say things, and then they say some more, and then they reduce some, add some. That's what politicians do. However, as you correctly put it, people ought to listen. But you see, people are listening with the ears of poverty. People are listening with rumbling bellies. People are listening with low expectations and hope.
Yep.
People are listening with uncertainty. Those are the years with which people are listening. So when somebody crafts a message that meets these needs, they are bound to get more mileage than somebody who thinks they're telling you something that seems to be good also in the future, but doesn't take into consideration all these things.
The immediate needs of the people.
Yes, which are actually dealing with what the person considers to be important.
Let's take a break at this point. 5 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We want to take a break on KTN Home, but the conversation continues on Spice FM.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up
All
your
right,
life.
so at 5 minutes to 8, the conversation continues. We are talking about, some of these promises, political promises that are being made. One is being made here by the sitting deputy president who is in office, who is getting all the perks of the state as a deputy president, but then he's making a promise for future. If I'm elected president. But we're seeing very many comments coming in on social media. What are people saying, Ndu?
Okay, so here we go. All right. Where do we start from? Okay. The DP has been in office since 2013. What has he done for the hustlers from that time? Do we have data to show how he has helped the hustlers in matters development? Abu Jamal says 100 million per constituency was a political statement and has been forgotten already. Why start a parallel fund if the youth fund exists? This is how government funds are squandered. This is Kenya. The DP campaigning against a failed government and he is the second in command. That's a question. What if the reality is different from your perception about Ruto? Well, could be, but again, it's all about perceptions. Ruto is an elected pair. Raila Odinga does not have a position in the Jubilee government. Fact. Ruto's problem is Raila. If Ruto was determined to serve Kenyans, the BBI or handshake wouldn't be an excuse. The DP is witty, playing a blame game because the pair has failed. Well, all right. This is hoodwinking the commoners to ride to the presidency, which is a Herculean task. This is a country where presidential candidates make promises to entice the voters. Money in Kenyan politics is given depending on interests. Okay. All right. Money is not usually the issue with us youth, but there's so many requirements to access it, and therefore many give up. Quite some.
All right. Someone is asking, who calls the shots? If he's only the deputy president, there's a president. And he's the one who says, my government. Doesn't say our government. Says my government. I'm the lion. So if the lion does not see there is need to empower the youth now, and you can see clearly that this, maybe you've even gone into cabinet meetings and said, why don't we do this? And it has not happened. Then you're saying, all right, so when I am able to dictate what should happen, I'll implement it. Implement it now, implement it in the future. I will implement it. Okay? So this whole thing of saying, we're going to empower, the whole empowerment story has been there for a long time. Vijana wetu wapate nafasi za ajira. Akina mama pia wapate riziki. This conversation when it comes to political campaigns, it happens all the time. We need to interrogate deeper and even push back and say, no. This is not what we want. This is not what we need. Or how you're saying that you're going to implement this, tell us how you will roll it out. Don't just come and tell us, now we're going to have a fund. We are now going to have another fund. We are now going to have, these centers of excellence across the country. We are going to have Big Four. Push back.
One of the things that I think is a constant currency with politicians, budding, seasoned or otherwise, platitudes. You say things, and man, do you say them. And just when you think they've said them, they say some more. And they'll keep saying it. Because what else can you do? If you're politicking, you really need to put across your idea. And how do you put across your idea? You say it. And if you're good at saying things, then the chances of being believed are much, much higher than someone who is not very adept at saying things as clearly as you. And our deputy president is good at putting ideas across. Yes.
He'll speak.
He's good at it. He knows how to piece his ideas together. He knows how to present them. He does.
Right. So we'll observe and see what happens during this whole political campaigning season. Empty promises being made. I mean, it's not the first time that we've seen empty promises being made. So it's upon us to identify which ones are empty. And even question, so how feasible is this? Where is the money going to come from? Why are you telling us this now? Why can't you just start doing it immediately? Why do we have to wait for when the rains come.
To get it done.
Yeah.
Or to buy an umbrella.
You know.
When it starts raining, then rush out and buy an umbrella.
Keep it right here for more conversations. In the next hour, we talk about food security in the country. This, we know, is one of the pillars of the Big Four agenda, food security. So we'll be having the PS in the Ministry of Agriculture to discuss this. Agri-Talk, where we encourage conversations on agribusiness. Good morning, it's 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, so we're still seeing some traffic on Mombasa Road this morning, headed out into the CBD, slow around Nyeri Stadium roundabout, headed into Hulu Highway, and then as you get into the CBD, slow towards Westlands. Understand, so we had the construction which was slowing things down considerably. Now this morning, add the rain that's coming down, pelting down also in some parts of the city. Quite heavy on Mombasa Road, heavy also coming out of Westlands, coming off of Thika Road to the Pangani Tunnel. This one is an adventure. Looking for a Monday morning adventure, go to the Pangani Tunnel. It's moving very, very slowly. Kiambu Road, that's another story, and I think Becky can tell us about that a little bit more. Kiambu Road now, very many lanes, much more than should be as you try to then join the Muthaiga corner coming out onto the Thika Road itself. So it's that Monday morning. We thought last Thursday was that Thursday. Today is that Monday. Let us know. You're stuck anywhere. Maybe we can give an alternative. The service lane seems to be operating well on all roads today. Let us know. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
It's 2.5 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We thank you very much for joining us. This is the third hour of our show. It begins every weekday morning, 6 a.m. up to 10 a.m. We are live on KTN Home for 2 hours, 7 o'clock up to 9. So we are still with the audience on KTN Home. We are also live streaming the show on Spice FM KE on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and we are also on www.spicefm.co.ke. Our tradition on the show is we begin every hour with the day's proverb by C.T. Muga.
When there is peace in the community, the chief does not carry a shield.
When there is peace in the community, the chief does not carry a shield.
No.
All right.
No, it doesn't need a shield.
Does not carry.
Doesn't carry one. Mm-hmm.
He also needs to project that image that there is peace.
Yes. And with peace comes security.
Yeah. Good times.
Peaceful times.
All right. Let's have a conversation now on Agri-Talk in the Situation Room. Here we promote meaningful discourse on agriculture, agribusiness, food security, as we know that food security is one of the 4 pillars of the Big Four agenda. And we've been having conversations in the last couple of days on what is happening in the agriculture sector in the country, especially in crop production. We had a conversation on what's happening to rice production. We've had a conversation on how to empower the youth to participate in agribusiness. We'll have a conversation today now on the other side, livestock, okay, which is a major source of meat for our people. That's where we get our meat from, livestock. And it's a major source of livelihood for very many people in our country. Joining us in the studio in the Situation Room is the Principal Secretary for the State Department of Livestock in the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives, Harry Kimtai. Asante sana, karibu to the Situation Room.
Thank you, Eric, for inviting me to come to the Situation Room. Actually, it's my first time to come here, and I'm really impressed with the discussions that I've been hearing going on in regard to what's happening in the country daily. So this is really good, and it's an opportunity for me today to also talk about issues agriculture and more so in livestock subsector and see how we are faring on, considering that it's one of the big four agenda.
Right.
Indeed.
Thank you.
When you talk about the livestock subsector, so a huge part of this country actually is set aside for livestock production or is best for livestock production. And very many people in this country, in many counties, are in livestock production. Just give us a lay of the country and livestock production and consumption of meat and where we are.
Actually, I don't think we use the word set aside. I think it is just the way nature has already decided to set our country into. We have the high rainfall areas, which is suitable for certain kind of livestock production. And then you have other areas which is deficient in rainfall, and therefore it suits a certain kind of livestock farming. We say that 80% of our country is arid and semi-arid. And therefore, what activity takes place there? Mainly it is livestock, because livestock doesn't really require a lot of rainfall if there is just enough forage to cover what the animals can take. And therefore, you find that that big chunk of our land now is set aside for livestock production. The other areas, which is a part of the Rift Valley, and central Kenya, is suitable for because of high rainfall area. It's suitable for certain kind of farming that is like dairy farming. All right, you have where people now are specialized in dairy farming, and therefore you'll find that the dominant livestock production activity that takes place in those areas are dairy farming, which is basically for milk. And then we have other areas like Nyanza, because of the challenges they are facing with diseases. Certain kind of livestock will thrive there because of resistance to disease. So you'll find that they have the livestock, yes, but their production is not high because of challenges of diseases. So that's how our country has been set. But now what happens is that the government comes up with the programs that is tailored towards certain areas. For example, in northeastern areas, we have challenges that faces that part of the country. One is a frequent outbreak of drought. All right, and therefore you find that the farmers there, they lose their livestock during drought season, and we've seen this comes in a cycle of about 5 years. Now it has been happening after 5 years. And therefore what happens is the government comes up with specialized programs. Some of these programs include what's called the resilience programs that will be able to sustain these farmers in their challenges. One, we have the boreholes, that because livestock requires water, and therefore to enable them continue sustaining themselves, we do we dig boreholes for them. That's number one. We also do what's called water pans. And then we also provide what's called the marketing infrastructure. That's we build markets for them because they produce a lot of animals and they need market where they are able to sell. They're able to sell their stock to those buyers who want. So those are the programs that are specifically tailored to meet their demands. On this other area where we have high rainfall and therefore it's dairy production, what we do, we support them in making sure that we bring farmers into a cooperative movement or cooperative societies where we supply them with things like dairy, the milk coolers. Now we've been able to distribute about over 400 milk coolers to these dairy farmers. Because what they need is they must, when they milk their animals, they must take their milk to the nearest cooling station that they have. If they don't do that, then they are going to lose in terms of their milk going bad. So we have got to strengthen that. We must make sure that we give them such kind of infrastructure so that they continue in their production. This will also enable the processors, what you call the milk processors, the ones who now come and offtake from these cooperatives. And therefore, the farmer doesn't take long. You remember those days when the farmers used to stand on the roadshow, on the roads, waiting for the milk canters to come and take their milk. They pour their 2 or 5 liters. Now we're telling them, don't worry. You take your milk to a cooperative where we've put a cooler and pour there. It's measured. You are given a receipt because we have computerized some of them. And then you go back home. Go and continue with the activities of farming. Whatever time the truck comes, whatever time the processor comes, they will find the milk still in good quality.
Yeah.
So those are the infrastructure, those are the policies that the government puts in place depending on the need of the area.
And is this happening countrywide? Or
Yes.
are you looking at specific counties where this takes place, or across the country?
This is happening across the country. As I told you, we've mapped out the livestock production in terms of the conditions that are available in each area. If you look at Northeastern, for example, we are now looking at value addition. We are talking about the abattoirs, slaughterhouses. We don't want them now to sell their live animals from those markets. We are now saying do value add. That means you should be able to slaughter these animals, put them in the chillers, transport them to Nairobi or whatever place that you have the market. So this is happening across. We have mapped out according to the livestock production of each of the areas. So it's not about county. It's just about the region.
Okay, let me ask, how many regions have you mapped out in total?
We've mapped out, for example, North Rift, where we know it's good for milk production. Central Kenya. South Rift is also good for milk production. And then North region, that's for beef production.
Okay.
Including now part of Kajiado and Narok.
Now, these regions, how many counties do you have in each of these regions?
For example, in Northeastern, we have 14 counties.
Okay.
All right. We have specifically 14 counties, which these are specifically for, and that's ASAL counties. And then you have the other 13, which is semi-arid, right?
Now, in the counties that you consider to be perhaps your key, how many centers do you have in these key places?
What we do, like I'll go the side of dairy first. Let's start from dairy. We've distributed over 400 coolers now to cooperative societies in this region. So, for example, we go to Meru, we see the production of milk. What is the need for coolers there? Because farmers, we ask them, they make their request. We ask, and we go do an assessment, and you realize that they need a capacity of 3,000. So we supply them. We do what's called a partnership. They put up the infrastructure, that's the housing, and then we supply them with a cooler, which comes with a standby generator, because sometimes there's a challenges of power. So we supply them with a standby generator and a solar panel that will help to heat water for cleaning, just making the hygiene and safety of the milk. So we've supplied in central over say 150 coolers. So each county is getting like about 20 or
so. Where I'm going with my question is, of the SACCOs that exist, or these groupings that exist, cooperatives, they call them SACCOs?
No, cooperatives.
Thank you. Of the cooperatives that exist, what percentage would you say have been able to receive this assistance that you are offering?
Because what we look at, you don't look at all the cooperatives.
No.
We look at the ones that are only have come together for the purpose of dairy farming, aggregating for their members. So we can say in terms of the cooperatives, we've supplied equal almost 60% of those who are in the dairy sector. We are still to supply them more because we've realized there's need of having more coolers, and now even reducing it to a lower capacity of 2,000 so that they're able to benefit in terms of, we don't need a lot of space, just need a small space. So we're looking at each group. If they are few and they're able to produce 2,000 liters of milk, we supply them the 2,000 capacity. If they're able to produce the one, we have the 3,000 capacity, we give them 3,000 capacity. Then we are now going to supply those big cooperatives that have up to 5,000 or 10,000 capacity. So we are supplying them as per the need basis based on their demand.
What happens to the farmer who doesn't want to take his milk to the cooperative and wants to sell it to his neighbors, whoever wants it?
We have what we are trying to do is under the dairy board, we are trying to come up with the regulations to help the sector. Sometimes there are those farmers who they need their daily income.
Yeah.
They are not able to wait
for 30 days,
30
to get
days
paid by the processor.
to be paid by the processor. Now, what we've done is we have allowed those ones to continue selling without really going to, because we don't restrict, we don't say you must go. Being a member of the cooperatives gives you other advantages. And therefore, it's your decision as a farmer. Do you want to be in the cooperative? Because when you go to the cooperative, you have a leverage of sharing, being the part of the larger group, and therefore you tap into what's called economics of scale, because you're able to aggregate all of you and negotiate the price with the processor. That's one. Two, you also enjoy other say, as a member of the cooperatives, they give you subsidy, animal feeds on loan, then it is deducted at the end of the month. So they have that kind of arrangement where they support their members. So, but it's your decision.
Do they have a credit facility as well?
There are those who have they have partnered with the banks to have a credit facility, and even to have to make sure that the animals are insured, because some of them have gone into high value animals, which they have to make sure that they take care in terms of risk of disease.
Right.
So this is all happening because now they are able to come together, and they are able to negotiate with the insurance, they are able to negotiate with the banks, and say these are our members. They look at they look at the balance sheet of the cooperatives and say, okay, they are worthy. They're able to repay. So all these things is happening because we've got to put them in that order so that we as a government can support them as well. Then other institutions also can come on board to support them
as well.
Yes.
As we look at food security as a whole, I mean, there's so many things that, as you talk about, these measures that you're putting in place to make sure that everybody is able to play on a level playing field, right? How do you take into because food security is that there's a provision of food, but there's also mitigating the problems that may come about.
Yeah.
Last year, we saw stories of a milk glut and farmers having to throw away their milk, right? Most recently, we've seen the stories of infected meat. I think as of 2 days ago, infected meat making its way into the market. How are you able to deal with those things to balance out all of this?
Let me start with the milk glut. That was a very interesting discussion that time because we, as a government, we've been pushing the farmers to increase their production.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden here,
It's
there is too much. They're not able to sell, and the processors are not taking. If the processors are taking, they bring down the price because of that glut in the market.
Yeah.
Now, we went round with the dairy board and tried to establish what is causing this glut. Of course, there are questions also. Members of parliament were raising these questions. We were saying there's also the supply from the neighboring countries. Because if you look at, I look at the region, I think the dairy sector in Kenya is the most established. But now the region is also, within the region, other countries of the region are also increasing their production. And where do they look at the market? They've also to come to Kenya and say, this is where the market, because the per capita consumption of milk in Kenya is the highest in the region, not even in the region, say in Africa. So you find that, therefore, if they go and produce in another country, they are producing at a lower cost because of the cost of production in that country. And therefore, they are able to sell and compete with our farmers here. So that is one of the reasons that caused what's called the market glut that was there, because now our farmers with a high price, they are not able to sell. And the consumer will always go for where they make an
Value
extra
for
saving,
money.
For sure.
value for money. And therefore, if this was being delivered to them and they are able to get it at this price, then they will choose. And therefore, the demand for milk went down. And we also realized that there were unscrupulous traders who were bringing in without following the due process, following the approvals of the government, because we do regulate the importations of milk through the Kenya Dairy Board. When we looked at the statistics of the importation of what is being consumed in the country, we realized that there is a slight gap in the sense that what we are approving for importation and what is in the country is not matching. We had to go around with the support of the anti-counterfeit and police, multi-agency team, dairy board, inspectors. we went around and we realized that we found a lot of milk that has not been, like milk powder that has been being sold within our country that do not have the right documentation, importation document. And therefore we confiscated this and we destroyed it with the anti-counterfeit.
So it was
now,
Magendo, not that
there was
Magendo.
There was Magendo also inside there. But since then, I think with the proper controls and ensure, if we are trading with our partners like Uganda, for example, because there was a lot of complaint that this milk, is it coming from Uganda?
Yep.
Is it true that Uganda is able to produce? That was another
more than us.
More than us. Because we never realized that Uganda was also improving their production. And we sent their delegation of high government delegation through the PS trade, and then Dr. Kipto, the dairy board, and the livestock production officers from my department. And they went there and they realized that, yes, true, there are also processes of dairy in Uganda.
Yep.
And not only Uganda, even Rwanda. And they want to sell to Kenya.
Yep.
So the market is Kenya. But because of their cost of production, as I said, then there was a little bit of challenge. But now that has been able to be controlled. Those who are allowed to import from Uganda, they are allowed to import, and therefore there is now what's called a trade that's going on. Our farmers are also supplying well. Our CS directed and then that KCC, for example, mop up, because His Excellency gave directives that because we established Kenya Cooperative Society, creameries, purposely to take care of our farmers. And at such a need, what they need to do is to offtake all the milk and then process it into powder. Keep it for future use as a strategic food reserve. And that was done because the government pumped in additional funds through KCC, and they were able to mop now the extra milk that was in the country. And therefore, that brought what's called stability in the prices. So that was a good decision that we had to support our farmers, and therefore, because KCC increased their price. When KCC increased their price, now farmers shifted to KCC. Now, these other processors also needed to have continuous supply, and therefore they needed now to compete. So that situation was rectified, and therefore the prices of milk went up. Right now, I'm sure my dairy farmers are enjoying because the prices is above about 40, 30, 35, 36, 37, up to 40. Others are offering, if you deliver, they're offering even up to 42. So you can see it's good. Per litre. So, and we have not stopped the trade between us and Uganda, for example. So it is still ongoing. So everything is normal.
What is
so
the
that's
demand?
what's called interventions that the government puts in place to rectify a situation when in the market, for example.
Are our daily farmers able to actually meet the entire demand of milk in the country?
No.
So what's the shortfall in terms of percentages?
What our target is to produce about 5.2 million liters per day, all right? And we're saying that the increase of the demand now is high, so the shortfall is about, we are looking at a shortfall of about 20% kind of.
20%.
Yeah, which is filled with importations from the region. We right now don't have a lot of importations from Europe, for example. So we have Uganda has taken up Burundi, and they all came to Kenya. They land from Kenya. In fact, they are buying animals from Kenya to go and
use for. We will have a conversation about that, Harry, because one of the things that you're saying is that it's the milk cost of producing a liter of milk in Kenya is higher than the cost of producing a liter of milk in our neighboring countries.
True.
These people have come to this country to learn how to produce milk, and they are able to meet that demand with a lower cost. We'll discuss that, and also we'll talk about the other question that Ndu had asked about talking about meat safety, right? And the issue surrounding meat safety and how the government then assures that there is safe meat circulating in the market. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. It's 24 minutes after 8. Let's take a break now. This is Agri-Talk in the Situation Room. With us is the Principal Secretary in the State Department of Agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives, Harry Kimtai. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM.
It's getting hot in here.
Oh, everybody steals. It's better a thief who brings something small back. And I say to myself, there's no better thief. A thief is a thief, period.
All those bribes, how much they are getting per year, how much inconvenience they are causing, as much as you call it a small case, it's worth it to be convicted.
The truth is, we are a tribal nation. Because if we were not tribal, and I want to go back to this, you cannot continue walking around with a mug which is clean outside and it's rotten inside.
We have become a fuliza country. We have mortgaged our country because of debt.
You've got one chef working and the assistant chef wakati anatakana koroge unga nini hayuko.
This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day.
All right, still coming down in pelts in Nairobi. 17 degrees at the moment. We'll see highs of 23 today and the possibility of rain going through most of this Monday. Light rain in Nyeri at 16, highs of 21. Highs of 26 in Nakuru where it started raining now. Highs of lows of 15. Highs of 23 in Eldoret. Mostly cloudy conditions at 14. Sunny conditions in Kisumu at 22. Highs of 30 and lows of 21. We're looking now at sunny conditions in Kakamega at 20. Highs of 31 and lows of 17. And light rain in Mombasa at 31 the high and lows of 26. It's still mostly cloudy in Malindi, highs of 31 and lows of 27 today. In Kampala, 19 degrees and sunny, highs of 31 and lows of 18. Light rain in Dar es Salaam, now thunderstorms seem to have abated for now. 24 degrees at the moment, highs of 31 and lows of 26. We're looking at sunny conditions in Johannesburg at 16, highs of 24 today, highs of 34, and it started raining in Lagos at 26 at the moment. That will be the low for today. In Kinshasa, it's mostly sunny for now at 22 degrees, highs of 32 and lows of 24.
Spice FM. Nyeri.
All right, the Southern Bypass, and this is from Mombasa Road. If you can avoid it, multiple accidents, unfortunately, today. We've counted 3 so far, and there's also huge traffic that starts right at the junction of the Olistereni Hotel. So the Southern Bypass, no-go zone, at least for now. You might have to stick to Mombasa Road. You're going to get stuck in traffic, though, around the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, heading into the CBD. So it looks like slow all round today. Coming off Thika Road as well, Kiambu, not looking good at all. Bumper-to-bumper traffic. The overflow then joining with Muthaiga Corner. That's not happening because we see Thika Road also a maze of traffic this morning. So this one requires patience. Also needs everybody to be very careful this morning because the rain keeps coming down and the roads are still slippery. All right, so there's a parking lot on most of our roads this morning. You're going to have to sit through this one. We'll keep you company though. Talk to us. Spice of MKE on Twitter. Text 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
The conversation continues right here in the Situation Room. 28 minutes after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room this and every weekday morning is Ndu Oko, C.T. Muga, Eric Latif. And for this hour, we are joined by the PS in the State Department of Livestock, and this is Harry Kimtai. We're talking about livestock production and looking at how we meet our demand. So, if we just talk about food in general, let's start with milk. You've just told us that our Kenyan farmers are not able to meet their demand for milk consumption in the country. I'm sure you'll tell us the similar story in terms of meat, when it comes to beef, when it comes to sheep and goat, when it comes to fish. Okay. The other day we were having a conversation about rice. Same story. Wheat, same story. Now that's one. Cost of production is a concern that keeps coming up whenever we have these conversations. You have also just told us when you had a milk glut, when Tanzanians and Ugandans are bringing their milk and Rwandans are bringing their milk across the country, it's cheaper than ours. Why is our cost of production so high across the board? Whether it's milk, whether it's meat, whether it's rice, right? Let's just go with the livestock. Why is our cost of production so high?
Thank you, Eric. Indeed, we've done the analysis in terms of cost of production. For example, to produce 1 liter of milk in Kenya, both what's called we have the free-range production. We've got the zero grazing and then the full zero grazing production, because all this is done, it's costed. And therefore, when you go the free range, because previously we used to do a lot of free range production in dairy areas, but because of the depletion of the forage, and therefore farmers are forced to now look for additional forage to supplement the grass, for example. And you find that now, if they do that additional, then they have to pay for the cost.
Yeah.
And therefore, when they look at the dairy meal, for example, the concentrates that they need so that the animals and the proteins that the animals need so that they can have high yield production. Because apparently we've also moved into high yield type of animals. So we no longer have the crosses, as we used to call them. So we've tried to take it up because of our AI service. One of the countries that has really embraced AI service is Kenya, since that we just took it over from independence.
Yeah.
We continued with it. And then the challenge comes now in the terms of cost of production. So you find that what we need are the concentrates, the cotton seed cake, sunflower seed cake. We need maize, so that the grain, so that we have the mix, so we get what's called our dairy meal. Now, all these ingredients, we don't produce it. It's not enough in the country, and therefore we rely on our neighboring countries because they have more specialized in the what's called the oil crops, cotton, sunflower, and therefore the byproduct of that is what you call the cotton seed cake. We've got the sunflower cake, and then also the production of maize. So we are importing from them, and therefore we are paying additional cost. While them, you look at their cost of production because they source these things locally, and therefore their production goes down. So that's where the difference between us and them in terms of costing. And then in Uganda, for example, they're still doing free range, and therefore, while we have concentrated on semi-zero grazing and zero grazing for high-yielding animals, them they're still on free range. So that's where the difference comes in. And then eggs, for example, again, eggs, the layers, you need a lot of concentrates. You need the chick mash, you need all this is grains, all right, and the crude protein that you require from some of the crops, which we're not producing enough.
Well, yes.
Yes.
This is information that we know.
Yes.
And we've known this for some time.
Yes.
And what have we done about it? I mean, we even hear sometimes of an overproduction of maize to the point where farmers are complaining about the price of maize, what they're being offered by the National Cereals Board. And these are the products that we require to ensure that we meet that end of, say, our beef or our poultry or of our milk production. Surely this very Ministry of Agriculture are supposed to be the people who ought to be telling us what they have done to ensure that this problem we keep talking about has actually been halted.
I'll tell you what we've done. All right. Number one, we are now trying to provide what's called the e-voucher, for example, the subsidy now program that it was rolled out. We used to have the subsidy, but that was basically for what you call we were giving to fertilizer. All right, so it was only fertilizer. And if farmers are given fertilizer, they were going into maize production. So sometimes they produce a lot of maize and then cereals was not buying. But we are saying that, and then they were depending on the price that is given by the cereals to determine what is the cost of production this time, because it was all calculated by the government, say cereals is going to buy at this price. The rest, the millers now can buy. And the government was buying a strategic bags of about 3 million bags just to keep in the strategic reserve. Then the rest is supposed to be taken up by the market. Now, for us, we are producing this maize, and the maize that we are producing in the country is all for human consumption. We don't have what to produce for livestock, for example. So what we're saying now is that we've, in last financial year, what we did is we allowed the millers to import maize, we call it yellow maize, specifically to use it to make animal feeds so that they can reduce the price. So that is one way of trying to stabilize, reduce the cost of production in the livestock sector. So that is one intervention that the government put in place. And we're also trying to now to tell the farmers to change. For example, we used not to do a lot of silage because we're only relying on grass, hay, all right? But you realize that now they need to, they need to plant maize, not only for the grain. They also need to plant maize to make silage for the animals.
Yeah.
And if you make that, then you reduce your cost of production by almost 50%.
If I'm hearing you right, you're saying we don't have food security.
We do have food security.
How do we have food security when we ourselves cannot actually produce what we need? How do we have food security when we have to keep depending on other people to supply us with the very, very inputs that we ourselves can actually produce in the country? What is the government plan to ensure that things like, say, cotton production, sunflower production, these are things that we've had in the country before.
Yeah.
Why have we not pushed this agenda so that we're actually able to meet these needs from within ourselves?
Good, very good question. One, you see, initially we were producing those crops because our farms were large then. But because of subdivision, we've reduced our farms to a smallholder in the sense that there's no more mechanization. Now, what you're doing and what, as a ministry, what we did is we did present a cabinet paper to the cabinet to request that the government releases some of the land that was the government land to private investors to come on board. Because the cost of, the issue of when you want to invest in agriculture, for example, buying land, it's very costly.
Yeah.
The government still has land that can give to these private investors in what's called the PPP, public-private partnership. And they bring in what's called mechanization. If they're doing, say, for example, sunflower, they're doing thousands of acres, and therefore there will be enough production, mechanization, there will be enough for feeds. So you find that now, with that paper, once it's approved, then the government is going to ease the land that is lying idle, is not being plowed, is not being put in the proper use. So that's one area that the government has looked at. As a ministry, it was our initiative to ensure that we bring in now on board the other private sectors. So that's one of the critical areas that we are banking on. And then two, we also developing, like for example, in livestock, we've passed what's called the livestock policy. And in livestock policy, it is going to guide us in coming up with what's called the livestock master plan. Now, we really want to understand the kind of production systems that we are talking about, where we're able now to attract the investors to come in. And with that, we'll be able to reduce our costs, because once we allow proper systems and plans that are there, each region will now say, these are value chain. They will now be able to reduce the cost of production in that area because of what is required to invest in that area. And it will now mean what's called the economics of scale, where an investor comes and says, okay, this is what I need to invest. With the support of the government policies, then they come on board. So that way it will reduce the cost of production. Two, it will make us food secure, as opposed to relying on imports. Because even when you rely on imports from the other countries, when their supply also goes down, what do? They don't supply us.
Yep.
All right?
They supply locally. What I'm hearing you say, Bwana PS, is yes, there's a roadmap towards getting there, but mostly we look at mechanized agriculture. Is there no way of using smallholder farmers, them forming cooperatives, and knowing that they can actually supply to this particular value chain? Because probably farmers right now are growing food knowing they are growing food for human consumption to take to a market. But if they knew that, okay, we need, for example, to grow sunflower or to supply sunflower seeds to farmers, dairy farmers who will come and buy. If you can create those linkages, is it not possible to just organize smallholder farmers in a particular region that is very good with sunflower production? Let them form a cooperative. This is a ministry that's also in charge of cooperatives. Let them know that they can supply, create that market linkage for them, and then this also improves.
I think that is what we've done, Eric. I want to tell you that through what's called the Agricultural Sector Transformation and Growth Strategy, that is what we are trying to bring on board. Number one, we are trying to aggregate all the smallholder farmers. Once you aggregate the smallholder farmers, you're able now to bring on board what's called the private sector, who are the off-takers. They'll now be able to say, with constant supply of this product, of this value chain, then they will continue in their production. They will continue in value addition and therefore do there's a linkage now between these farmers. You see, initially the smallholder farmer was just independent farmer.
Yeah.
Trying to, if it's a milk production, they want to look for the source where they can sell their milk, and sometimes they're frustrated. But now if you aggregate all these farmers and you're able to advise them and say, now this is the off-taker, they will come and off-take. They have a warehouse, for example, and then there will always be a synergy between the off-taker, because the off-taker will be able to supply some of the inputs to the farmer, because it's called contract farming. All right? One, you're guaranteed that this supplier, once they go into production, they will always give it to you. So that's the area that we are focusing in. And if you look at the 9 pillars of ASTGS, one of it is to bring these farmers together, aggregate these farmers into one. And that is our pillar number 1, which is really critical. And when you do that, you are going to increase the income of the smallholder.
What will it take? How long will it take for this to actually get to the ground and start seeing the aggregation of farmers, the creation of awareness, training for farmers, for them to see the value? I mean, the strategy is already out. It's already been published. It's been approved, right?
Yeah.
So the next steps would be now is going to any part of the country and hearing farmers telling you that we actually had a meeting here and people from the county and the Ministry of Agriculture were telling us to do this, and you're already looking at modalities of bringing ourselves together into one giant cooperative that then takes advantage of this. How long will this take?
I don't want to say how long it is going to take. It is something that is going to take us 10 years, because our strategy is 10 years. But it has already started. Number one, through programs. For example, in the Ministry of Agriculture, we have, and Crops the department, we have a program called the Climate Smart Agriculture, which is supporting the farmers, grouping the farmers, and they pick in every county where they're operating. And they're in 23 counties. Now, in those counties, the farmers pick their value chain, meaning they can produce with the lowest cost, the value chain that they can produce with the lowest cost, or they have what's called comparative cost advantage in that county, and therefore they pick it. Once they've picked it, now they are able to be supported, trained through the program, and then we also bring on board the off-takers. Now you can see already we're not just developing the strategy, we develop the strategy and develop the programs as well. And then we have what's called the National Agriculture and Rural Inclusivity Program, again, in the other counties. So therefore, we have covered the entire country in terms of the programs. And this we are doing together with the counties. So the counties identify their value chain. If it is honey, if it is poultry, if it is dairy, all these farmers are now supported. Groups are supported, and they are divided into, there are farmers who are now going into hay production. Specifically, their business is to do hay. Why? They have farmers, the counterparts who have picked the other value chain of dairy. So they have to supply the hay to
the dairy
farmer. So that is the linkage that we are now doing as a ministry to ensure that our strategy is implemented. Yes.
Okay. So now, every now and then we hear stories of, infected meat, or we hear a story of game meat being in butcheries. We hear every now and then zebra and I don't know what else finds its way behind the glass. In terms of food security, making sure that food is not just available, but that it is safe for human consumption. Now, how then do you tackle things like this? I mean, we've had an outbreak of infected meat just the last 2 days in certain parts of the city. And certain parts of the country, sorry. So how do you mitigate against this?
Number one, we agree as a ministry and as a country, we are saying if food is not safe, then it is not food. Because that is poisonous. That is affecting the health of our population. So we're putting in all measures. For example, when it comes to issues of livestock meat, all the meat that you're supposed to consume must be inspected by veterinary public health officers. All right? That must be. It is there in the Meat Act, so it has to be, and the Veterinary Public Health Act. So, and we have a mark. If you go to your local butcher, I don't know if you've seen, you see some marking.
The stamp.
The stamp.
Yes. Yep.
That shows that meat has been inspected. Now, there is no day a veterinary public health officials can inspect just the meat that is being displayed there. They have to inspect at source, at the slaughterhouse, at the abattoir. So the inspection starts at the abattoir. All right. Anything that comes in between that filters into the value chain or the system, then that is something that has been introduced outside. That's number one. Number two, preservation, because we have some chemicals that have used to preserve food. All right, meat, for example. There what's allowed, allowable limits, and what is not allowed. So I think now that's where what's called the public health officials take over from there. That they must inspect every premise to see how the food is received, how is it stored, and how is it disposed or sold to the consumers. Now, all that system must be monitored very closely. So, so the safety of food is really key, and that's where now the government inspectors come on board. Any other that is found to be selling the meat that is not allowed, game meat, for example, then those are the people that we normally arrest and take them to court.
You know why I'm smiling?
Yes.
PS.
Yeah.
As you're saying, all
I thought,
meat.
I thought I was answering the question until you were smiling.
No, you are answering the question, but my mind drifted when you said all meat must be inspected. So I'm thinking, I go to my rural home and I'm slaughtering chicken.
You slaughter.
Do I ask the
local vet to come
yes,
and inspect?
if I have goat and I have sheep and I'm slaughtering, if I have a cow and I have many guests and I'm slaughtering, do I bring them? This is why I was smiling.
Yes, I will tell you.
Yes.
One, as long as you're having guests, if it's consumption for your family, you're slaughtering your chicken, you just pick from your farm, you don't need to inspect. But as long as you're having a public gathering, it's defined. The number that you're gathering for the purpose of, say, sharing a meal, you must inspect.
Really?
Yes.
Do you know how many people in this country then have gone against those requirements?
We are supposed to, as long as you're bringing in, you're gathering people.
What's the threshold?
It's like a wedding.
What's the threshold? What's the threshold? How many people?
At least if you're having more than 10 people, you must. Because if you're slaughtering a goat, and the number of people are going to consume that goat. If slaughtering a cow, for example, the number of people are going to slaughter that cow. All right?
So it's a high number. One of the things that people in that sector then would talk about is those multiplicity of laws. There's the Health Act, there's the Meat Act, there's whichever act. And then the expert in meat is the veterinary doctor.
Yes.
That is the one who's been trained on what is meat, what is quality meat. He inspects this meat at the slaughterhouse, and then he releases the meat after putting a stamp. It's put in this container that's written red meat, and it has a number for the slaughterhouse. Goes to the market. Now, there's what we have seen recently in terms of the market then doing its own things to meet market demand, which includes now putting excess amounts of sodium metabisulfite, for example, the preservatives and all, and also unscrupulous people finding their way into bypassing the slaughterhouse, slaughtering antelopes and zebras and bringing them to the market. But the vet guy...
You've left out donkeys.
And the donkeys.
Yes.
Donkey is good meat now.
Donkey
is now meat.
Donkeys is meat.
Donkeys classified as meat.
We have banned the slaughter of course, again, there's no production of donkey. What's happening?
The donkey population
is reducing, and so there are challenges because of theft of
donkeys.
But it's now licensed. It's gazetted as
and
meat.
camels.
Camels is gazetted
as meat for a long time. Now the question was, so the vet guy only works at the slaughterhouse and does not go beyond the slaughterhouse. After the slaughterhouse is somebody else who is a public health officer who looks at public health but does not really understand meat. Should we not be bringing the vet person also to the butchery to look at this meat and say, this is good quality meat? Because the public health officer is looking at, is this butchery clean? Does it have white tiles? Is the butcher wearing an overcoat? And that is not necessarily the quality of the meat.
You see, the quality of the meat is determined from the animal. Is the animal infected? Like what she was saying, that we had cases where people are consuming infected meat. For example, anthrax. All right? An animal is sick, and somebody takes it to the slaughter or slaughters for public consumption. That's an animal that should be condemned. And therefore, it's not good into the system. That's number one. That's why the veterinary public health officer is crucial at the time of slaughter. What animal are you slaughtering? Are you slaughtering a healthy animal or are you slaughtering a sick animal?
Yeah.
So it is determined at that particular time. And therefore, the division here comes very clear. The demarcation of the roles played by the two professionals are very clear because they are trained differently. They are trained to observe, to look at the animal diseases. When they slaughter, you might think, what are they looking at this animal? Because when they slaughter the animal, when the animal has been slaughtered, they check the intestines, they check the internal organs to see how it has been functioning, and they're able to determine what kind of disease. So in simple observation, they can do that. And they also collect samples sometimes, and if they suspect, then they can take it to the lab. And test and confirm what kind of disease is this, because that is happening all the time when you take it through the procedural way of handling food of animal origin. Now, the public health officer comes here at the time of the animal, this meat has been certified to be fit for human consumption. And therefore, it is now going to the normal premises. Now, the premises inspection is done by the public health officer because they look at many other factors. Do you have water? Do you have toilet? Do you have, how ventilated is the room?
Yeah.
And where are you keeping this meat that you've delivered? Do you have proper storage facilities? Because some of them don't have proper storage facilities, and what they do is they add a lot of chemicals for preservatives. And at the end of the day, it affects the health of a consumer. So these two professions are really key. I cannot say we need to allow the other one to go beyond this. No. Let's stick to what is our role as a veterinary officer, public health. What is the role of the public health officer?
Yeah.
And let them be strict on their work. And for example, the public health, they are supposed to be doing what's called periodic checks. They don't stand there every day. But the veterinary guy has to be at the slaughterhouse every time.
For every new animal.
For any new animal that's being slaughtered, must be certified. But the public health, they have systems where they can say you've been licensed. They check what you are supposed to put in place using a checklist, and then they again come, because after some time, they have to come and see.
Yeah.
Again, what kind of, what are you using, the food grain, what's called the food grain materials that you are using. If, for example, it must be in, I don't just use any other kind of iron sheet, for example, if you have the type of knives you're using, a lot of other things that come in place, right? The sharpeners, because as when you sharpen, there are a lot of, you see, when you look at that, all this goes into what's called your health.
Yeah.
So, and the public health officer is the one who checks all those tools of trade that is being used.
To ensure the safety.
Yeah, even milk, the way you transport milk in a jerrycan, it's not allowed.
No.
And you're going to sell it in Kudarai, for example, all the way from Kiambu or all the way from
and it's in a
Nairobi,
plastic. It's in a plastic jerrycan.
How long does it take for that milk to go bad? Short time. So we again recommend certain kind of containers to be used.
Let's hear from our callers who are on the line and they'd like to ask you a couple of questions. This one is Yegon. He's a very good listener of ours. Yegon, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Eric.
How are you?
I am fine. How about the entire team and BS?
Good. How
Good.
are you?
Thank you, Yegon.
Yes, I have a couple of 3 questions.
Okay.
One is between a veterinary officer and a public health officer who is supposed to inspect the meat. Number 2 is that the cost of treating now animals is so high. And we have a lot of counterfeit drugs on the acrofits. How is the ministry doing so that they can reduce the cost of treatment and even having the genuine drugs at the market? Lastly, is about the training. I've seen that this is a state of department.
Yep.
And they normally have their training facilities. But their mode of advertisement is still an old model of through magazine. They have no page. So getting the advertisement to their colleges is quite normally a difficult task. Allow for application also is normally that through you write down. You apply, send through the G4S to the facility so that you can be now followed up. So at least if they can make it online, it could be better. But the last comment is a positive comment that we thank them for the price of milk. We have seen the price increase from 23 shilling up to now. We are enjoying, maybe for example, let me speak for Nandi, we are enjoying at the price of 40, 36, 40. Lastly is for City Muka. City don't stay in Nairobi. Nowadays, each puja, they inspect meat. Regardless of in the village, even at the village level, we have veterinary officers, but there are few. Thank you.
Okay, Asante Sana Yegon. 0719-012-600 if you have a question for the PS. Those 3 questions, PS. I think the first one you'd already answered, who between the vet and public health inspects meat. That one I think you've already tackled. So this issue of the cost of treating animals and the proliferation of counterfeits in the market.
Thank you. I think the question Diego has really asked, and he seems to really understand the sector very well, and he follows it until he knows that we now have even the village inspectors. What I just said is trying to validate. One, yes, I do agree that the cost of treating of animals is now high because most of the veterinary guys who are out there are now in private sector.
Yeah.
And therefore, it is what they charge. It's not, we have very few government officers now. Before, we used to have the extension officers, the veterinary officers. But now, that because of the structural adjustment programs in the 80s, the government was advised not to have, to allow the veterinary practitioners to engage directly with the farmers and determine the cost of treating an animal. 2, I think the veterinary officers, why it's becoming expensive and they look at them as expensive is because of the kind of drugs that they are now using to treat animals. I think it has gone up. The cost of veterinary drugs have gone up. And that's why farmers feel it's expensive. But what I can say is the issue of counterfeit. We have within our State Department what's called the Veterinary Medicine Directorates that is supposed to license all the veterinary drugs that come into the country, just like we have the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. And therefore, we don't rule out cases of counterfeit, people bringing in these drugs, because people, they want to make scrupulous, very quick money. But we have officers now who are going around inspecting, making sure that the licensed agrovets are stocking what is approved for sale. And we also urge the farmers to verify because you must have a registration number in every drug that you're buying. And even if the veterinary officer is supplying you, ask the veterinary officer treating your animals, which drugs are these? Because sometimes they carry them and they just come and treat the animals without you knowing what. You must have a book in your farm that when the veterinary officer has treated your animal, what did this veterinary officer treat the animal? Was it foot and mouth disease? Was it East Coast fever?
And what medicine did they?
What medicine did they? And must indicate their number, because we have the Kenya Veterinary Board as well. So we have 2 institutions that registers the veterinary practitioner and the one that licenses importations of veterinary drugs. So this veterinary officer who is coming to your farm must show an identification that I am a registered, fully trained veterinary surgeon or veterinary practitioner or a para-professional, and then you allow them to treat the animals. The issue of cost now is something that you have to determine what kind of disease is this and what procedure is it.
It's got to be used.
And
1
then
hour is a short time.
The other one is training. Yes, we have the Animal Health Training Institutes. We have Ahiti Kabete, Ahiti Ndomba, Nyahururu. We have the Dairy Training Institute in Naivasha. And then we have the Meat Training Institute here at the river. Now, what we've been doing, and I agree with him, we now need to use the online application. We've been using the government advertisement, the MyGov, we've been using the daily newspaper circulation. But now we need to transition that to what's called
go online.
So I think I agree with this.
Embrace digital, Bonaparte.
We have embraced. We have embraced. I think it's only that also we have challenges. We are seeing a decline in the number of professionals who are coming in, especially the paraprofessionals. there's a decline in those who apply. So we are now trying to sensitize them, to tell them the importance of having more trained vets in the country.
But PS, 1 hour is a short time, and we thank you very much for coming and joining us today. And I think we'll invite you again so we can come and delve more into. Today we've talked a lot about milk production. We'll talk about meat and the producers of meat in the country and what they need to do.
Let me just to summarize.
Yes,
I want to inform our listeners that we have now what's called the Bachuma Livestock Export Zone that we are constructing. That will be a state of the art once it is completed for export of live animals, number one, and also we want to expand it to also once we bring on board a private investor who now do what's called the value addition. Now they'll be doing the slaughtering within that region and then exporting to the.
Please tell our listeners where Bachuma is.
Bachuma is in Taita Taveta County.
Right. Yes.
It's good to tell them. Yes. You know, we are used to Bachuma because you just know where it is.
It's good to locate
but for our listeners, it is in Bachuma and it's going to serve the entire coast region and northeastern region and also part of the North Rift. But we shall be opening up other areas because now we've got to go into what's called the value addition. That's the area that we are looking at.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, we've not touched. We've just done the introduction.
Yeah, we've just scratched the surface in terms of meat. Harry Kimtai, PS Livestock, thank you very much for joining us. Asante sana. We'll hope to have you again soon. And we want to say thank you to our audience on KTN Home who've been with us since 7 o'clock. It's now 9 o'clock. In the next hour, we have more conversations. 94.4 is our frequency in Nairobi. If it's Mombasa, it's 87.9. We're in Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. You can also tune in via our live stream, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, on Facebook, and Twitter. Good morning. A minute after 9.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Okay, so Mombasa Road is still have some traffic getting to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. It's actually quite slow. Then getting into the CBD also. Langata Road, traffic is hell on earth is what is being described this morning. Not moving as you'd like it. The current status on the southern bypass near Kikuyu town, guys, bumper to bumper. It doesn't look good at all. We're also looking at Langata Road, that's bumper to bumper in both directions, all the way from the barracks, even before that, at the turnoff from Bomas, all the way to the T-Mall roundabout in both directions from Wilson Airport moving forward, guys. This one, it looks pretty bad, and this because of the accident that took place earlier on. Now combined with the rain, not looking good at all. All right, guys, still heavy traffic in very, very many parts, and the rain still continues to come down. Let's be careful. Let's sit it out and wait. If you haven't left and you don't need to, I wouldn't suggest that you do. Spice FM KE, talk to us on Twitter. You can text us 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start.
9. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Welcome to the 4th hour of The Situation Room. City Muga, let's begin with the day's proverb.
When there is peace in the community, the chief does not carry a shield.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When there is peace in the community, the chief does not carry a shield.
Yes.
You'll tell us why you picked this one.
Yes, I will.
Are you seeing like a chief near, there's a local chief who's carrying a shield? and yet there's peace.
You know, this wonderful country of ours. if you
come across a chief in the weekend,
put it this way: every other person in this country thinks they're a chief.
They're called chief.
And why do I say that? It's because every other person has an opinion, and they believe that that opinion of theirs is the right one.
It's a supreme opinion.
Yes. And others should be subservient to it. Yes. But we shall delve into it further.
Okay. Yes. So, when did we start campaigns for 2022? In 2017?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
When did we start?
Never stopped.
In 2010. With the new constitution, we went into
it
2022
has not stopped.
campaigns.
It just goes up and then down and then it evens out and then it's never stopped. It's just that we've gotten used to the campaigning. So the only time we notice it is when it peaks. When there's a lot of activity. And then again, those of us in the media, we are responsible for it in measure, of course, but we are. Because we heighten it, we hype it, we give it a lot of airtime.
Is there heightened political activity now?
Right now? Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Good or bad?
It's just heightened political activity. Heightened political activity is never good or bad. The good and the bad comes into whose side you want to take and which perspective you want to lean towards. But it's neither good nor bad, because if you listen carefully, they're all selling the same stuff. Better lives for you.
Yeah.
Yes. All of them.
But they are also not doing what they should be doing.
Well, if you're in the opposition, you're better placed, because you really don't have, you can claim you don't have the means to actually make any changes. And then, of course, the blame then falls heavily, implied or otherwise, on the government. But then, if you happen to be in government and you want to campaign, then you'll do what we've seen our deputy president doing. You cleverly create great distance with the reality of your position. So deputy president is just a title. It has nothing to do with responsibilities. And you keep repeating it. And then you shift it to those who appear to be friendly to the government, and you say, now this is the real government. Okay? And they're the ones who are responsible. But the promises, the same.
Same.
Same. And the narrative also is the same, because it's a question of where you target your blame.
I think there's concern, City. There's concern when you see politicians, going about the way they're going about now with a kind of rhetoric that they're spewing. So there's heightened political activity, heightened campaign season, and the way we just, excuses as a country as, it's nisiasa, it is political silly season. In fact, we even call it that, and we laugh about it. Whereas you can clearly see that people have stopped working. They have now started going around the country, pointing fingers at one another and blaming each other for what has been done, what should have been done, has not been done, and even now starting to get personal. Where you stand up and say, this person pretends that they're living with a disability and they're not. Somebody else goes ahead and talks about, the way the country is being run. So even the Cohesion and Integration Commission raising its antennas high because of increased rhetoric that is negative. And what is bringing this all about is because there's a 2022 campaign coming up. Is it not too early to start this? Is it too early to start a campaign for 2022 now in the manner in which it's actually being conducted? Or should we be saying, okay, it's part of our life? I mean, sisi wote ni wa Kenya na tunakuanga kwa siasa. Is that?
We may think it is early, but who are we to determine the timing for politicking? The thing is,
we are the audience.
Yeah, but we are a ready audience whenever it is presented.
Well, I think there needs to be I don't know if to call it an emergence of the realities that Kenyans do face. You say that who are we to determine the time? I think Kenyans are the ones to determine the time by virtue of the fact other things that they're actually going through at that time, and demand that attention and focus be paid to those things. I think that politicking, if we want to look at it really closely, is going to go on regardless. It'll happen. I think what we have an issue with is the magnitude to which we are seeing things happening now. Is that every minute that is available, so long as the sun is shining, even when it is not, is being used to politic, whereby it can be used, whereby it can be used for other things to be done. And I think the problem that we are hearing is that a lot of focus is being attached to this race for 2022, where there's a flurry of other things that need to be paid attention to.
Are you saying that
and also
what
running
is happening
the risk,
now is more heightened than what we saw in 2017 going to 2018?
I'm not saying it's more heightened. Neither am I.
It's more heightened than what we saw in 2019.
In last and the year before that.
Okay. And 2020. There's an election in 2022.
And we saw this happening in 2018, 2019, 2020. And now it has gotten so hot to the point that we see the kind of abuses and the kind of intolerance that we are seeing growing to levels that if we don't nip right now, will not be managed come that 2022.
Remember the time when people actually got arrested for hate speech? Would you then say that in that period of time that the political rhetoric had heightened? Politicians insult each other when they're politicking about something. So are we saying that because 2022 is literally around the next two corners, that is the reason why political tensions have heightened?
Yes.
Yes, and plus, because this is all, you started so early, that's what everybody's focusing on, and then people can do whatever they want because everybody's focusing on that thing, and so now people can say what they want, behave in a manner in which they like, and nobody's putting any reins on it, and they say, okay, this is what we're going to focus on for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Nobody's saying anything about it, so we just go on. It's definitely going to get worse.
So is it that the population that votes and the population that listens to the rhetoric, so are they the ones who determine it, or is it the needs that they have that determine it, or is it, in my opinion, the contrived and manufactured problems that they have bring about this situation where the discourse has to be political?
You see, I have no problem with the discourse being political because the political problems will have political solutions. And the reason why we participate in political exercises, for example, in voting, is so that we have people in leadership, in political leadership, who will influence things that will benefit us. The problem is, instead of them doing what they're supposed to be doing, they are coming around telling us about the next election, as if it doesn't matter that we elected them just 2 years ago to do exactly what they're talking about now.
We are raising it here, but are our countrymen complaining?
Yes.
How are they expressing this complaint?
Kenyans are complaining. Kenyans are talking about the fact that they need other things to focus on. They need other things to be focused on rather than what is being focused on right now. 2022, whereby they have present issues
there may not
that
be
need to be dealt
unanimity
with.
in how they express this complaint.
But
right?
the expression is being made.
But the expression is being made in certain quarters. Okay, for example, we're going to have a conversation shortly with Fred Obachi-Machoka. Fred Obachi-Machoka is a renowned broadcaster. He recorded a video where he was saying, look, I want to speak to political leaders and I want to tell them, look, guys, this is not the time for you to keep, telling us about 2022 and what you're going to do in 2022 and whether we should elect you. This is the time for you to fulfill the promises that you made in the last election. When you came to us in 2017, you told us this, and the other is what you need to do, is what you'd like to do. So you're given the mandate by the people to go either into the executive or into legislature. When you have gone there, focus on delivering what you promised. Don't come and tell us now about 2022 and what you want to do past 2022. What are you doing now? Now you're just coming and wasting our time and coming to manufacture a problem. The problem was there before, and that's the reason why we gave you that mandate. And you're coming, instead of telling us what you're doing to solve the problem, you're coming to amplify that problem and telling me that in 2023, I'm going to solve that problem. Don't come and talk to me now. At this point, we are just coming out of COVID-19, not out of. We in COVID-19. Coming to terms with COVID-19. People have lost jobs. People have lost their livelihoods. People are struggling. People have lost their businesses. Businesses have shut down. You're trying to look for new ways of doing things, and the politician comes here and tells you other things that are not actually addressing what you need today. Today, you have to feed your family. Today
you have to pay school fees. Today you have to think about the fact that insurance will not allow you take your children or your family to a hospital, and you have to think about where you get that money from if you don't have it readily available in your pocket. Today you have to deal with those things, and they've already catapulted us to the future and in a constant state of going forward, whereby the present is not even being taken care of. And regardless of the fact that whether it comes from 10 people, 1,000, 100,000, or 1 million Kenyans, is that it is a problem that is being faced by very many people. And what are we going to run into? We're obviously going to run into a place of apathy, where people are not even interested in hearing about this anymore. People are going to get more and more frustrated. People need solutions to their problems. People need answers to the issues for which is their basic right to be provided by a government. That's what people are looking for. There's nonsense that's happening where people have a feeling that they can say whatever they want, do whatever they want, and people are looking up to you for solutions.
Actually, they can, because we allow them to. Please, remember we've had this discussion before. It is one thing to protest and to say, and it's a good beginning when you protest. You are airing out what you feel and what you think, okay? But our reaction tends to be usually to just keep quiet or murmur in closeted arenas or with a few people who may share our perspective. But beyond that, because in all honesty, the problems that Kenyans are facing are getting worse. They're not getting less. They're not lessening.
Yeah.
They're increasing.
Yeah.
Okay? And yet, as you correctly put it, Ndu, the rhetoric from our leaders, our elected leaders, no less, seems to be the same thing they always do. Same thing. Talk at the problem.
So, for example, look at this funeral that took place over the weekend, okay, in Chaka, in Nyeri County. There is this person who lives with a disability who was knocked down by vehicles that were going towards the president's meeting in Sagana State Lodge, okay? So it is said that the vehicles belonged to some certain senior people and former politicians and politicians. So this other side that was not attending the Sagana meeting is the one that comes to this particular man's funeral, and speaker after speaker, they're just bringing their politics to this funeral. And talking about tunaona vile mwananchi wa kawaida ananyanyaswa, all those kind of things. What do you think the family of the late gentleman wanted at that point?
To bury
First
their
of all,
kin.
they wanted to bury their kin. And even if there's any conversation about justice, they wanted to know, how can we access justice? What is it that we need to do to make sure that we get justice for our departed kin? But no, the leaders who are coming here, none of them is talking about this is a route to take, or saying, now you shall go and report here and you shall follow, and I volunteer my services, I volunteer to take you guys to meet the officers involved. No, they're just coming to do politics. And that is what we must stand up against and say, come on, come on, come on, come on. This is taking advantage of a situation where people are grieving to come and do your politics.
You know, sometimes people refer to some of these situations as a case of temporary insanity. But since this one is consistent, it can't be temporary
It's not
anymore.
temporary.
No, it's not.
It's a permanent state of insanity that seems to have infected just one class of
It's
people in this
terminal.
country. Well, you've taken it yet to a different level altogether. I hadn't gotten the terminal bit yet. I was still talking about what seems to be consistent, and it's because how on earth can you be so far removed from the reality of what's happening around you? You're at a funeral. Can anything be more real than you can't have a funeral unless someone has died?
Yep.
No.
Okay. You can't practice being at a funeral. You know, someone has to die and then there's a funeral, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're at a funeral and this is... But does it not follow from trends we've seen in the past? Let's begin with the funeral of the late mother of Musalia Mudavadi. Did we see anything different from the politician? Not really. Recently, the deputy governor of Kisii
lost his father.
Did we see anything different?
Yep.
No, we did not. Now here, a simple Mwananchi.
Funeral of Nyagarama, the late governor of Nyamira.
Did we see anything different? No. So, this thing is no longer a temporary state of insanity.
It's like that's what is happening.
It's a permanent, and I think the extended definition that you gave it is probably what we need to look at. That committee that looked into the mental health of our country, I think they should begin with our political leaders and tell us what is it that ails them and what is it that makes them so far removed from the everyday reality of the citizenry that voted them in, that every time they come into a situation when they ought to provide a solution, all they do is focus on themselves and things that no one needs at that particular point in time. Absolutely no one.
If I allow you to do something to me, right, once, and I may feel, oh, okay, maybe it was a mistake, right? And then it happens the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time. after a while, what am I going to start to think? That this is the way in which it is supposed to be. And the person also doing it to me doesn't think any differently.
Yeah.
The person doing it to me also believes, okay,
this is how it should
this
be done.
is how it should be done, number one. Number two, I understand that I am violating this person. However, the protest that they're putting up is nothing. Is nothing. There's no resistance. There is no restraint. There's no fight. So, am I going to change the way in which I do? Of course not.
Actually,
You made it easy for me.
This
I
person,
can just come and continue doing the same thing.
This person does not understand that what they're doing is they're violating you. They've actually moved away from that. In their mind, there is no violation at all. And that's why they'll excuse it and say, unajua ni siasa. Tumekuja hapa kuchapa siasa.
Oh, but I think that they do.
They'll speak at a funeral and say, unajua lazima tuongee mambo ya siasa kidogo ndio mali.
But if you knew that it was, if you didn't know that it was wrong, you wouldn't have to give that that rider or that explanation that, najua lazima tuongea. You wouldn't have to say that. You would just come out and say it if you knew that there was not a problem. But you have to explain it away. You know that there's something wrong. For somebody to call you out later and tell you that, this was bad. For social media to go crazy the way they did yesterday over this whole albinism and people living with disabilities issue. And then for the person who spoke to come out and apologize later, knew that what he was saying in that moment was wrong, did not expect that it would come out the way in which it did. Knew that it was wrong, or that it would not be responded to. And I can bet you my bottom dollar, if the vitriol that did not come out, if the lashing did not come out on social media, that apology would not have been made.
You know what impunity is? It's when you start coming to work late, first time, second time, third time, it becomes normal. Somewhere at the back of your mind, I should not be coming in to work at 7 o'clock.
But nobody's asking you. You just flow
it becomes normal.
Because nobody's asking you. Nobody's demanding of you.
It becomes a normal thing. Let's bring in our guest, Uncle Fred Obachimachoka, popular broadcaster. Good morning.
Morning, Eric. How are you doing?
Salama kabisa. Good to have you on the show. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you. You did not say that I work for Royal Media, Radio Citizen, specifically on Roga Roga. That is transparency.
Kabisa. I have to say, you are a famed broadcaster. So can we now start from... So Dr. Fred Obachimachoka currently works for Royal Media. Before that...
Yes. Before that, VOK, before that, KBC, before that, VOK. So it's okay.
Fred, you recorded a video that was shared widely on social media. And in this video, you were talking about this political silly season. For the benefit of those that didn't see the video, just reenact it. What is it that you were saying?
What I was saying is that we have had this handshake and BBI stuff and anti-BBI stuff campaign for over 2 years. Kenyans are not deaf. If you think you have hammered the point home, then please leave us alone so that we can concentrate on other issues that are affecting the Kenyan citizenry. And there are many. If you think you haven't hammered the point home, then I think you are assuming that we are deaf, in which case it will never be hammered home. We got about 2 years to the election date. And surely we need even just 6 months sabbatical, a break from the monotony of BBI, anti-BBI campaign, and do something that is different. Kenyans are still reeling from the coronavirus pandemic that has terrorized us big time. There are issues that need to be addressed. There are teachers who retired way back in 1997 who are yet to receive their pension. People are dying because some medics can't even access insurance and so on and so on. Why can't we just address that, even if it is for 6 months, so that we say, come August, it is home stretch, 1 year to go, let's go now and blaze the trail of siasa.
Fred, it's like politicians feed off of this thing, and to ask them to remove what essentially will give them their sustenance is akin to killing them. Are Kenyans ready to say, really, guys, it is too much? And are Kenyans ready to focus on these other things that, or at least at the very least, demand that they focus on these things that we've talked about? I mean, it's ridiculous. Pension, 1997, that has not been paid. Why? Questions like that. It would seem as if politicians cannot be politicians without doing this thing. And are Kenyans ready to demand that they focus on these very important issues?
You see, the problem we have is that politicians will shut up instantly if they realize nobody's listening to them. So the media is at fault right here. We, the media, are barking up the wrong tree. We cannot. You know, I keep on telling people, you know, in the industry that I can write a news bulletin for December 2021 and it will be relevant if they read it then, because it will be about BBR, it will be about Tanga Tanga, it will be about all sorts of things, and it will be headline news in December. We do not do any reporting anymore. These days, you find the media going to, for example, a Raila meeting, and before they file that story, they will go to Ruto and ask, what is your input? Raila has just said this, what do you want to say? Or vice versa. They will go to a meeting, and once they finish, they will pass by Raila's place, even if he did not have a meeting, and say, what is your rejoinder on this one? So the news media or not owners, because we are not even under instructions. It is us, the reporters, the editors, people in the newsroom who basically think that what they are doing is balancing news. You don't have to balance nothing. You just have to carry news, and news has to happen. You can't start imagining huyu amesema hii, sasa tuende kwa huyu atuambie na yeye anasema nini. That's, in my opinion, I think is wrong.
Mr. Obachi, are you saying that really, surely, in all honesty, news should not be balanced? I mean, if it isn't, then we'll be accused of bias. It will be said that this particular news house seems to be focusing only on the things that are conducted by this individual and the other by the other. Surely. And if someone is pro or for or against, whichever the case is, then that news outlet will lose out because of the absence of balance.
I am not saying it should not be balanced, but I'm saying you should not be assuming there should be balance. If I don't have a rally, okay, it is a political rally. If we must cover a political rally in the first place, then cover that and present it as the news for the day. If the balance comes, let it come as a deliberate rejoinder from the other party. It could come tomorrow. It doesn't have to be on the same news bulletin.
But it won't be interesting,
you can't
will
go
it?
looking for it. Sorry?
It won't be interesting, will it?
It won't be interesting by your standards.
It is true. It is by our standards. But I'm in agreement with you here, Mr. Machoka. I'm in agreement with you because I'm in agreement in that we spice up the situation. I agree with you completely. I am of that view and I express it as often as I can. But what I'm saying is this. What you are asking the media to do, is it something the media can actually do?
May I ask you a question in that balancing thing?
Please ask.
If you are covering a news item on FGM,
yes,
and you've gone to some place and there is a meeting that is condemning FGM, do you go to the people who are for FGM and say you have been you have been condoning FGM, you support it, what is your view? And then you balance that and present it to the citizenry?
You have been in the media longer than I have, but I'm sure that you understand that no, he has, and it's the truth. But what the media looks at is what they think will be appealing to those who consume their product. FGM is not as highly consumed as politics.
Right, because politics has been entertainment. Media has made politics entertaining. Even when a reporter is doing something about, Mheshimiwa Raila or Mheshimiwa Ruto, you can see the energy with which they do that presentation. Once they move to something that is touching or on people, medics not having insurance, on teachers not having been paid, on tea farmers not having received their bonuses well enough, it is like, tea farmers in Chisi, Nyankoba factory, it is like, it doesn't matter.
Fred, I hear you. I hear you, man. But I have to ask you a question.
It is us. We are guilty. Let's admit.
I get it. I understand. But Fred, I have to ask you something. So let's step into this ideal situation. I mean, from what you've said for a moment, I'm coming off the buck of the question. Are Kenyans then consuming what is put out to them, or is media putting out what is demanded by Kenyans? I think that's the thing that we ask ourselves. Do Kenyans want to hear this, or and that's why the media feeds into this? Or is it coming from what has been previously prescribed? If this is changed around, do you think that politicians will then fall in place or fall in line and get with the program?
Politicians can fall in line if the media is organized well enough to make them fall in line. Let me tell you why the media has lost it. The media is supposed to set the agenda. They, we are supposed to inform, educate, and entertain. All right?
Yep.
And be able to remind people. A guy will be invited to the newsroom for an interview. He will not be reminded of the negative things that he has said because they might embarrass him. And the news media houses are scared that if these politicians get embarrassed, then they will not turn up for media interviews. If they don't turn up for media interviews, they will move to other media houses, and then we will be like not having juicy conversations. So it has become an entertainment exercise. Until we get out of it and tell people that it is no longer entertainment, it is reality. You came over here, you told us that we are going to get 5 stadiums. We haven't gotten them. You indicated they will now be 9 so that it is all scattered well enough. We haven't gotten them. Now BBI has come in. You are telling us BBI is bad. Give us your document. Now that is from Mr. Ruto. All right? And actually pin him down and say, give us your alternative document since you don't like BBI. And for BBI, we must be able to tell Mheshimiwa Raila, you have told us about BBI for far too long. Give us a document that we can see and filter through and accept it or not accept it. But don't keep on going round. It's become a circus.
Okay. You see, so when the politicians then are called into media houses for these one-on-one interviews, then those questions are the questions to be posed to them. But when the politician is out there at a public rally, addressing a public rally, what should the audience then be demanding of this politician? Because you see, much of what is covered is actually picked from a public rally. Oh, here we have Ruto, who was in Mombasa, and this is what he said. And basically, you're just reporting what was said. And this is one of the jobs of a newsroom. Report it and say, this is what has been said. Put it out there.
Eric.
And then, this is what the politicians are saying out there. So the audience, which is the general public, what is it that then the general public should be able to send a message? Because this is not just the job of the media. The greater audience here is the public.
The public, son. Eric, listen, the public, which is this public you're talking about that is in rallies? First, if I have a rally in Kitengela or Isinya here where I am, as a politician, I bring my own audience. So you are saying that what is it that the audience has to say? The audience has been already been tuned. This is what politicians do all the time. If we rely on the audience that is at the rallies to ask questions, we will never get any questions asked, because I have been to many rallies before. I have seen exactly what happens. I see them in Kitengela when I'm passing through to town. You find that a day before, all the borders wameitwa mahali, kila mmoja, the border has been fueled. You know, they are the rally makers. They are the cheerleaders.
So,
you understand? So, yeah.
So the audience has already agreed to participate in this.
Yes.
So even if the media stopped, these people will still go to the rallies. They'll still be able to organize this rally. They'll be able to get their audience.
And therein lies the problem. The media stops because they think the only newsmakers are politicians. We made them. Media is lost it, and I say it all the time. Allow me to say this. If I died today, okay, the media will carry that as a news item for sure, but it will end today. If it lasts longer, it will be again during the funeral. But a politician, they will do profiles, they will do all sorts of sound bites, Zakitambo, they will, it will run for a month. Mpaka unajiuliza, this is a media house that lost its own staff. But it is just saa saba, saa moja, after that 9 o'clock they go back to BBI, or they go back to my brother Ruto, or they go back to some guy in Migori who is another politician. You know, that is it.
So, Mr. Machoka, are you saying that this superstar status that politicians have is a creation of the media?
Absolutely. The media will pick a guy who has insulted somebody, and that becomes the headline news. And then every other politician realizes, Allah, it is only those who throw insults and who are comical that are quoted. If you go to a rally, there are some things that are good, that are highlighted, that are brought to the fore. But those things will never find the light of day. They'll never see anything, even 30 seconds on news. Are you telling me at for example, this funeral that took place at Deputy Governor Mangi's place, there are no people who said something decent?
There were.
Were they given any airtime?
It was live. The whole process, the entire thing was live.
But it was, the entire thing was live. But there was news later, real news.
Yeah.
But and the day after, the day until today, we are talking about those punch-ups between Arati and Osoro. They are superstars.
But they are superstars, Fred, because they have been elected by people. They have been given a responsibility by people. They have been hoisted by the people to lead. So when they behave this way, it's important that then they are covered and shown for who they are. Is it not?
But if every time,
if that punch-up happens,
if every time all we are doing is covering the negatives, that is the politician that we have. We covered Waititu with the stones. Yeah. We covered Kalwale with stones. Yeah. We covered Simbarati punching. Yeah. We covered Sonko punching the walls. Yeah. But we have never covered the story about how he confessed purportedly to have come out of Shimolatewa. Nobody has gone and done a proper background check and said this guy never denied that he was in Shimolatewa. This guy never denied that he was a jailbird. How did he become governor? Interrogate that all through until now. But now we are again saying this guy has been persecuted. You understand? We need to be real. The media, that balancing you're talking about, the media needs to investigate everything. We were talking about the other day about the ICC. When people were saying, "Hawa walitupeleka ICC," nobody went back to the information we have in the library that shows who voted for the ICC, who did not vote for the ICC. You understand? And say, really, these are the people who voted, and these are the people who said, no, we should not go to the ICC. We went along with the politicians mpaka leo hii. Wakenya hawajui ni nani alisema watu waende ICC. And we got it in the library.
It's right there, the Hansard records.
Yeah.
Fred Abachi Machoka, you have therefore said that, it's time politicians gave us a break. It's time politicians allowed us to put bread on the table today and then come and talk to us about the 2022 politics in 2022.
I think so. I was in Israel in 2019.
Yeah.
It was a week before elections. I only saw a poster of all the 5 prime minister candidates, at a roundabout in Jerusalem, and nothing. The news was not carrying anything, and it was a week before elections. Here we have been on election mode since 2018.
Yep.
Come on. There's something wrong.
I know you've said this, but I have to ask. How do you explain this? Because it isn't just the politicians and their rhetoric. It is us and our love for consuming that rhetoric, and then us in the media for propagating the same rhetoric. What is it about us that makes this?
I'm still investigating, to be honest, because the people who are suffering so much, the people really don't have a penny in their pockets. The people who are looking for jobs, the people who are calling their relatives and saying, "To me a pound," are the same people who have been disenfranchised. The people who don't have roads, the people who can't afford even NHIF, are the people who can kill you. Wanasema wewe uliongea mbaya kuhusu mtu wetu.
Yep.
Na mtu wao is there just because they speak the same language. Fred Abachi Machoka, if I meet Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, our president today, he will see me and he will recognize me. If I meet Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga, he will see me and recognize me. If I meet Mheshimiwa Ruto, he will call me by name. You understand?
Yep.
But if I meet a Jaluo who is passionate about Raila, he will think ataniua kwa sababu nimesema mbaya kuhusu Raila. Nikipata Mkale ambaye anapenda Ruto sana, atasema wewe uliongea mbaya, wewe upendi mtu wetu. You understand? But today, if we both met Mheshimiwa Ruto probably will recognize me earlier than he will recognize that Mukale. Yeah. Raila will recognize me earlier than he will recognize that Jaluo. But these guys think that they are closer to this man because he speaks their language. Absolute rubbish. I don't know how to liberate these guys.
Actually, it's more than language, really. And if you look at the rhetoric that we have right now in the political arena, it's a little more than that, because there is the issue, what we are calling identity politics, at some level has gone beyond the language that we speak. There is trying to associate with what you think will be the winning side. That is one.
Yes.
There is two, your own personal identity of making a stand and taking it to the people who you think are responsible for the plight that you find yourself in. And the hustler narrative has played very well into this, because it seems to present people with the platform from which you can castigate and point fingers at those who you believe are responsible for your own problems. And when you look at the culture of goon squads and goons, it's, apart from it being a growth industry in the employment sector, it is also a sector where people feel they can identify with those whom they think are leaders. And so it's a question of self-identity and self-importance. Now, psychologically speaking, when somebody has been battered by normal circumstances or ordinary like poverty, like disease, and a complete lack of hope, then there's an over-exertion and over-dependency on individuals who you think will bring about the hope as opposed to yourself. So it's a complex situation that we find ourselves in, but where you are 100% right is that we in the media have not helped allay the situation. We've actually exacerbated it and made it worse.
Social media then has a role to play as well. Because, see, for example...
Eric, before you go to social media, boss, social media, if we can't control conventional media houses that are less than 100, and even just the leading ones, you can't control millions of social media who are media owners in themselves.
Yes.
What my brother said about hustler narrative.
But your brother is called C.T. Muga.
Oh, yes. I didn't know. Wanamuga, thank you. What you have said about the hustler narrative.
Yes.
Honestly, any right-thinking person who cannot condemn this hustler narrative is committing suicide. And the biggest culprit. Mimi naongea kikisi hapa, yeah.
Hiyo pia ni sawa ndugu, endelea tu.
Unagwesa tu kuendelea.
Yeah, it's all right. The biggest culprit of the hustler movement is the author of the hustler movement. That will be the biggest culprit. My brother, when the hustlers will have elected their own to parliament, to state house, that is when they'll make demands.
They're real own. They're real own.
Some of us who don't support the hustler movement, I don't, because I think it's rotten. I can't believe that someone could have come up and said, we want the hustlers versus the dynasty. I think it's wrong, because I don't think he meant it. I think he has just discovered that it actually works for now, that is. And it is an explosion waiting to, a bomb waiting to explode, because you cannot tell those people that it is me who will liberate you. There is no way, unless a formula has come of that liberation. Tuanze kuisoma. That is where the media now needs to say, Mheshimiwa, give us the roadmap to hustler liberation. You understand? Putting together the strategic plan, the management, the budget, and how you expect to achieve results. Because once these hustlers are up in arms, itakuwa kama Mungiki. I'm sorry, it is a dangerous thing, and anybody who really wants to have something good going for Kenya should discourage people from this hustler movement campaign, because it is dangerous. Ni kama kwenda hospitali and you find me sick in hospital, and instead of telling me, Fred, utapona, uanze kuniambia, oh my brother, you have suffered. Even your parents can't come to see you. Your brothers have left you dying here. If you tell me all sorts of those things, I'll be so bitter with my relatives. I'll be so mad with my parents. I will hate everybody. And in the process, I'll just be dead.
Fred, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today, Fred. So, as you conclude, as we let you go, and then we look at traffic.
Yes.
What message then would you like to give Kenyans? So the message to politicians has been given. The message to media you've given. Now, give the message to Kenyans. As we go into 2022, what is it that we should do, look out for, and avoid?
I want to start with the middle and the upper class. The guys who never vote. These are the people who have put us where we are. The only time they vote, they actually vote for the president And then they look maybe for the governor, and then they start looking at parties for MPs and MCAs and women reps.
Yeah.
So you find that the people who are voting for these other people are the lower class.
Yeah.
Those are the people who vote for
The
others,
MCA.
so to speak, the MCAs. Middle class don't even know who their MCAs are. They don't know even who their MPs are. Some of them, they actually voted apathy, and they voted people who are really despicable. And those people are holding millions of shillings of Kenyan money, which they are spending in bars and on other very funny things. Kindly middle class, ile mambo ya kusema sasa mimi siwezi kupanga laini for this long, wacha niende, alafu weka nyama choma hapo kwa ngapo Isinya, mimi nitakuja kula
hapo Fred's Ranch.
At Fred's Ranch they wanaachana na kupanga laini kupiga kura. Please make sure you vote. Make sure you interrogate who is going to be your next MCA. Those guys are given a budget that can develop this country, the governors and what have you. That is my message to the middle and the upper class. To the politician, Kenyans are not deaf. Kindly suspend this BBI thing, suspend this anti-BBI campaign. We have heard you. If you think BBI is good, tumekusikia. Tupe break for the next 6 months. Let's concentrate on other things. And if you think BBI is bad, pia tumekusikia. We have heard you too. We are not deaf. Please, let's talk about other things. To the mwananchi, now the common man who votes, watu ambao ndio hao wa boda, watu ambao ndio mama mboga, watu wa mikokoteni, the farmers. Msidanganywe kwamba kuna mbunge ama president ambaye atawasikiza mambo yenu. Mnajua wa Kenya wote, you know the Kenyans, these people did not drop from above. You know who is cheating you, sweet talking you. You know who is a liar, who is a thief. You know who is unreliable. You know whom you can rely on. Ninyi wenyewe mnawajua. Hao wote viongozi ni wa Kenya wa kutoka ng'ambo. They have been here. You know them. Listen to them. Analyze them. And then vote for the right person. Not because he is a sweet talker, but because he is a Kenyan. You have tested na mumeona mambo ambayo anaweza kufanya. Thank you.
Asante sana. Fred Obachi Machoka, well, celebrated broadcaster and presenter of the Roga Roga Show on Citizen FM and Citizen TV. Asante sana for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
We'll have you again soon.
Asante sana.
10 minutes to 10. Let's take a look at traffic shortly and then continue and open the phone lines for you to join this conversation. What is it that you think that needs to happen as we go towards the 2022 elections? Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. The weather with Spice
We're looking
FM.
at drizzles in most parts of Nairobi today, just as a recap of what the weather will look like today. Nairobi will see highs of 23 today. The showers are going to continue for most of today. Rain showers also in Nyeri, 16, going to highs of 21. 26 the high in Nakuru. Light rain throughout the day. 17 light rain in Eldoret, highs of 23. And it's partly sunny in Kisumu at 22, going to highs of 30 today. 31 the high in Kakamega, 22 at the moment, and partly sunny conditions. It's raining in Mombasa at 29, highs of 31 and lows of 26. 28 in Malindi, mostly cloudy, highs of 31. Sunny conditions in Kampala at 21, going to highs of 31 as well. It continues to rain in Dar es Salaam at 24 degrees, highs of 31 and lows of 26. It's partly sunny in Johannesburg at 20, highs of 24, coming down to lows of 16. It's still raining in Lagos as well. 26 at the moment, going to highs of 34. And light rain now in Kinshasa, going to highs of 32. We'll take a quick look into Beijing, where it's sunny at 7. Highs of 7, lows of -7. And -1 in Paris. Highs of 2 and lows of -2. And we have light snow still continuing in that snowstorm in London. -2 going to highs of just 0 and lows of -1. And finally, for now, into Monday morning, it's -4 degrees in New York. The low will be -5 and it will be at a high of flat at 0.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
All right, traffic still continues in some parts of the city. We're looking at Thika Road still moving quite slowly, as is Kiambu Road. Not everybody has been able to join the Thika Superhighway, trying to get through the Pangani underpass and then out towards Ngara and then into the CBD. Still slow. The rain is still coming down, so this we understand. The accident that took place on Langata Road that caused all that traffic is now being cleared out. Traffic still continues in both directions, however. We still see some traffic on Gong Road into the city. Jogo Road and Industrial Area is another story. We still have flooded roads, so need to be careful as you get into those. If you can avoid, please do. Spice FMKE through the day. That's how you can talk to us, or text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.
Becky Kim says, wonderful message to the middle class there from Fred Machokas. She says, civic education and participation is very important in the next elections. What do you think? I think the message here that he says is, all right, we've heard you. Can you just give us a break? You don't have to keep, building up on this political conversation daily as we go towards 2022. Take a break. If it's about BBI, go tell us, okay, so you've worked on the BBI, so this is what the BBI is all about. And let us read, let us make our decision, and let us move on. So that is very ideal. That's the ideal thing to do. Practical?
For who?
Everybody.
Practical for Kenyans in
Yes.
terms of continuing to hear about politics? Absolutely.
Yes.
Practical for politicians whose lifeline and lifeblood is being able to talk about this over time? Practical for them? Absolutely not. Because you're removing their lifeline and they'll probably fizzle out in terms of importance. But practical for Kenyans, if you want to look at it, yes.
I don't think so.
Other things.
I don't think so. If it was practical, then, you see, nobody forces people to actually attend the rallies.
Actually, they do.
They force you to attend the
Yes,
rally?
they do.
How?
If someone impoverishes you by the decisions that they make and the way they conduct the business that they're supposed to conduct on your behalf, and then they leave you with hope that hinges on what you think they are going to do, and you believe that at rallies they will be able to give you a way forward, they have forced you to come to those rallies. Because what other option do you really have? What option do you have? What are these options that are available to you? And your reality is poverty. One. Secondly, more poverty. 3, suffering which is related to this poverty.
Not everybody who goes to those political rallies. When they talk about poverty, then we'll start graduating into the levels of poverty. And the level of poverty they talk about is where somebody is at a point where they actually have no choice. Many of the people who will attend those political rallies have a choice. They have closed their business, they've come to this rally. They have come from their farm, they've come to this rally. Many. Look at these crowds that were attending these political rallies over the weekend. It's not that all these people are completely without a choice.
Actually, if you don't have a job, you don't have a place to go to.
Yes.
You don't have a choice.
Yes. Not everybody in this crowd that attended this rally in Kinango, Kwale County, addressed by William Ruto.
On which day
is
was the rally?
jobless. Yesterday. Saturday.
Saturday.
Yes.
People have time on their hands.
There are people who closed their shops. There are people who stopped doing their business. There are people who stopped their border business. There are people who came from their farms to attend this rally. That's what I'm saying.
Eric, there are people who will close their shop, close their businesses because they are politically inclined. The vast majority of people who attend these rallies do not have anything better to do with their lives on that particular day. That's just the reality. And why don't they have anything better to do with their lives?
It's a condescending way of looking at it, but we can discuss it later.
It isn't condescending.
There are also people who go
there
to
are
these rallies.
thousands, boss.
Yeah, there are thousands of people who go to these
in a
rallies hoping
village,
that they're going to get something in their hand which they ordinarily would not have
So
on that
this-
day.
in a village, on the day that there was no political
Eric,
rally, where were they? You want to tell me those? And the
this
thousand,
better thing that they had to do is what exactly? Tell me.
what they were doing the day before the rally. The day before the rally and the day after the rally, they are engaged in something.
Many people are engaged in nothing. They are not employed. They don't have a way of earning a living. The unemployment rate in this country, my friend, especially among young people, is really high. It's not as though the bulk of people who are young in this country are employed. No, the bulk are not employed. That's the reality. And if you look at the pictures that you have of rallies, the vast majority of people you see there are young.
Let's talk about this again in another day, okay? On another day. Coming to the top of the hour, remind us today's proverb.
Yes, when there is peace in the community, the chief does not carry a shield. A shield is a symbol of protection. And when you have protection, it means you are anticipating danger. If there is no danger, you do not need a shield. You do not need protection. You don't have to have people surrounding you and providing you with protection or providing you with security. If you look around you and ask yourself, look at the number of people our politicians surround themselves with, and you'll ask yourself, is the chief living in a community where there is peace? If so, why do they have this shield of humanity around them all